Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of the FNAF Retrospective. Last time we took a look at FNAF's 1 through sister location, and today we are going to be looking at everything else. This video is going to be jam-packed, so let's just jump right into it.
This game is one of my personal favorites. It doesn't really have any fun teasers, so we can just jump straight into the game. Pizza Sim is the 6th mainline game in the series. It was released just over a year after Sister Location, and it wasn't heavily teased. Most people, me included, found out the game existed on the day it came out. I woke up for school that day, opened YouTube for a little bit before leaving the house, and saw Markiplier posted a video on the game. All day I was anxious to get home because I wanted to play it, and to my surprise and delight, the game was free. So you boot up the game, and the first thing you see is a little minigame. You can design a pizza before moving on to the next segment. In this segment, you have to feed a bunch of pizzas to these kids on the other side. As you get to the later rounds, a black bear appears, blocking you from throwing pizzas. Getting past this round will glitch out the game and take you to the first hint of the real game. You're face to face with a new version of Baby, made out of scrap, and you're given instructions to test it using audio stimuli. This becomes an aspect of the gameplay later, but as of right now, this is essentially just a tutorial because it's entirely scripted. The man on the cassette tape will count down before starting each new audio segment, and after a few, the tape stops and Baby replaces his voice and counts down. Once she reaches 1, she looks directly at you, and then we cut to the next segment of the game. We get an introductory monologue introducing you to the fact that you bought a franchise package and are now in charge of running a Fazbear pizzeria. On top of this, it tells you that buying items that are marked down can save money but cause great risk that some unwanted critter could be bought with it. That's the basic gist of the game. You own a pizzeria, and through the days, you can buy things and decorate it. You start with $100, although if you select the bottom 4 toppings from that pizza minigame, you can start the game with $200. You have 4 different catalogs that you can buy things from, but you only unlock them after buying a certain amount of items from the previous catalog. At first, you can only buy these shitty things like number 1 crate, Mr. Hugs, Mr. Can Do, Pan Stan, etc. You can also buy this cardboard box ball pit, which is probably the funniest item in the game. There are specific items you can buy that act as minigames. You have 10 play tokens per night, and you can get things like the ball pit or these arcade machines, and you can use the tokens to playtest these attractions. Some of them have hidden lore, which I'll get to later, and some of them are just fun minigames that you can play. The ball pit minigame is one where you have to push the spacebar when the arrow is over the ball pit. If you get it on time, Helpy will jump into the pit unharmed. If you miss, however, Helpy will break his back and the music will cut out. I think one of the moments I remember most clearly was Markiplier's reaction to this in his first video on the game.
Ooh, Retrospective. Shit!
Anyways, there are specific ways to make money during the simulator segments of the game. You earn money when you do good in these minigames, so getting 4 or 5 in the ball pit minigame will give you some money, as well as other minigames that have easy gameplay. Some of the better minigames to use to get money are Midnight Motorists, the Fruit Punch or Lemonade Clowns, or the Basketball Hoops, as long as you can get the jackpot via 20 hoops. You can upgrade your pizzeria as well as unlocking animatronics that look a lot cooler. This game introduces 4 groups of animatronics. There's Trash in the Gang, which is composed of the few animatronics I mentioned earlier. Then there's the Mediocre Melodies, composed of Orville Elephant, Happy Frog, Mr. Hippo, Ned Bear, and Pig Patch. There are the Rockstars, composed of Rockstar Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Lefty, who is only $5.
Lefty! Lefty is $5!
Anyways, the last group is the Posh Pizzeria, consisting of Music Man, El Chip, and Funtime Chica, who is making her appearance after being notably absent from Sister Location. With each new group, the animatronics cost a lot more, and if you want the achievements for each, there are ways that you can get the more expensive animatronics without having to pay as much. Using the Ball Pit Tower, you can unlock Music Man after playing it 10 times. The same can be said for Funtime Chica if you play the Prize King minigame. Anyways, there's one other way to make money, and that's through sponsorships. There's a new one each night, and they always increase in price. At first, you may think that this is just easy money that you can redistribute into your pizzeria, and you'd be right, but when you click the Finished button, you are in for the consequences. You see, this game is split into 3 main segments: the pizzeria simulator, the salvages, and the night segments. Once you push Finished, you're thrust into the night segment with no warning. During the night, you have to complete a series of tasks. Some of them are just printing things, others are replacing light bulbs, except you do them all from your desktop, so it's a sit and wait minigame. In your office, you are sandwiched by 2 huge vents. The animatronics that you salvage will end up in the pizzeria. You have a few tools at your disposal to deal with them. There's a motion detector, so you can locate them if they move. There's an audio lure that has a chance of getting the robots to move if they're in range, and if they happen to get into the vents next to you, you can shine your flashlight to get them to go away. You can also use silent ventilation to make it so that the animatronics aren't drawn towards the sound your vents make. The more noise that's being made in your office, the more the animatronics are drawn towards you. Whether it's the ventilation or one of your tasks being loud as fuck, the animatronics are going to move towards you. This is why the best bet during the night is to turn off the ventilation for as long as possible. However, if you let the temperature get to 120 degrees, you will pass out and have to start the night over again. Anyways, I mentioned that taking the sponsorships would come with consequences, and those consequences are ads. These things last 5 seconds and are loud as fuck. Unsuspecting players may be lured in by the money, but taking these things will result in you getting a hell of a noise that pulls the animatronics straight towards you. You can also use money to make these tasks go by faster, which does help, but it doesn't stop this game from getting really hard. You see, you have to deal with 4 animatronics during the later nights, all of which can team up on you and enter both vents at the same time. If this happens, you're basically boned. The audio lure is also not entirely effective, so you can't stall the animatronics in one area for the entire night like you could in FNAF 3. Hell, you usually can't even stall 1 in the same area for the whole night, let alone 4. The mechanics of this game are a little wonky, and there's a really great video that explains it a lot better than I can, so I'll put a link to that in the description. But I will mention that there are specific areas in the vents that will cause the animatronics to teleport directly next to your vent, which allows them to get a lot closer to you a lot faster than they normally would. This adds to the challenge, and these nights usually take longer because there is no time limit. You can take as much time as you need to finish your tasks, as this game, like Sister Location, abandons the 12 to 6 aspect of the original 4. Anyways, the third and final gameplay segment is the salvage minigames. For the first 4 nights, after completing your tasks and logging off, you will come face to face with the 4 main threats of this game. First is Molten Freddy, then Scrap Trap or just Afton, next is Scrap Baby, and the last one is Lefty. You are given a taser that will reset them back to their neutral state if they were to move at any point. However, you can only use it 3 times before you end up cutting the salvage value in half. Again, the video I linked explains it a lot better, but these minigames have the animatronics set on a counter. As each audio stimulant plays, the counter goes up and they will move according to that each time you flip up your paper. If their counter gets above a certain number, they will jump scare you and you get no money for the salvage. They each have 3 stages. One is their neutral stage, which they usually start in. The next is stage 2, which is slightly moved from their neutral state. And the third stage is their attack pose. These visual cues will clue you in for shocking them, but sometimes their counter can reach jump scare level before they actually move to their third position. So these visual clues aren't always reliable indicators for when you have to shock them. Anyways, those are the 3 gameplay sections, but before we get to the lore, I will quickly break down the different endings. There are 6 endings and 6 certificates, although one of the certificates isn't for one of the endings. I'll get there. The easiest ending to get is the bad ending, where you don't get a certificate at all. To get this ending, you have to refuse to salvage at least one of the animatronics. It's easier to skip salvaging all of them and hope that they don't end up sneaking inside. Basically, if none, 1, 2, or 3 of the animatronics are there, you'll get this ending. If the 4th one ends up inside, you'll get a different ending, so beware of that. Getting the bad ending results in you getting fired due to you not following your obligations under paragraph 4. This is a set of rules which requires you to check the back alley of the pizzeria and salvage any animatronics found back there. So, bad ending gets you fired. What else is there? Well, there's the mediocre ending where you don't upgrade your pizzeria at all. Doing this keeps your FAS rating at 0, which ends up getting you the Certificate of Mediocrity. Next ending is the bankruptcy ending. You get this one by going into the negative values after a lawsuit. I don't have the footage anymore, but on my first ever attempt doing the marathon of all the games, I managed to get 2 animatronics and a lawsuit on my first night. This led me to going bankrupt due to the fact that it was literally day 2 and I had no money to fight it. I deleted the footage because I needed computer space and a 19-hour recording was not helping. Anyways, the next ending is the blacklisted ending. You get this one if you have a total of 50 risk when you complete the last night. This one is a tough one to get. The best bet is to wait until later nights to buy things because they get marked down. Even then, it's still tough, and it was the ending that took me the longest to get. Anyways, the last 3 endings all have some lore to them, so before I break these ones down, I'll get into the lore segments. This game exists to tie up loose ends from the previous games. I'm sure you recognize that the main antagonists aren't really all new. They're just redesigned versions of the loose ends from previous games. We got Scraptrap, or Afton, who was teased at the end of Sister Location. Of course, he went from his FNAF 3 design to looking like this, so make of that what you will. You also have Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy, who are clearly carried over from Sister Location. Around the time that FNAF World's second update came out, Scott was busy teasing the Silver Eyes and Sister Location. Because of this, he got a second website that was dedicated to FNAF World. In the build-up to the release of Pizza Sim, Scott hid an argument in the source code of his 2 websites. On scottgames.com, you could see Ennard saying, "You're crowding us." Baby responds on FNAFworld.com, telling them to be quiet. "You can't tell us what to do anymore." "Yes, I can. You will do everything that I tell you to do." "We outnumber you." "That doesn't matter, dummy." "We found a way to eject you." "You would be lost without me." "Haha, say goodbye to our friend." This argument explains why Ennard isn't seen in this game, and why Baby has herself a new form. Baby was ejected from Ennard, leaving her to put herself back together with Scraps, hence the name Scrap Baby. The rest of Ennard ended up using Scraps to recreate the face of Funtime Freddy, hence Molten Freddy. Lefty is an interesting case, because you're left to piece together hints of who this is that are left in rare screens and expensive endings. It isn't visible on his in-game model, but on rare occasions when you boot up the game, beat a night, or die, you can get a rare screen of one of the Scrap animatronics in the back alley. If you happen to get Lefty's rare screen, you can see 2 things. 1. On the top right of the screen, you can see the mask of the marionette. 2. Inside Lefty's arm, you can see the signature stripes of the puppet. Anyways, if you get the Insanity ending, which you can get by buying this data archive and holding the computer button as you turn it on, you get some information about this cassette man as well as Lefty. The presentation that comes with the data archive has a lot of lore that I'll explain later, but for right now, the most important thing to look at is this screen. Lefty is actually an acronym that stands for Lure, Encapsulate, Fuse, Transport, and Extract. So from that, we can figure out that Lefty was made to capture the puppet, and he was made by this strange man that you can only hear. He's clearly your employer, because he's on the cassettes that play the audio stimuli for the Scrap Robots, as well as in the Insanity ending. The audio file in the Insanity ending is labeled HRY223. You can interpret this how you want to, but you could see HRY to be Henry and 223 to be 2023, which is the year that FNAF 3 takes place, and it could also be the year this game takes place. At least, that's how MatPat presents it. The validity is a little debatable because HRY doesn't have an N, so you wouldn't pronounce it as Henry. But whatever. You remember, Henry is the co-founder of Freddy's, along with Afton. His relevance in the series kinda died after the theories about his role in FNAF World, but this game brings him back. He had a role in the books, but it really was just that he made 4 robot children and then killed himself. That is an oversimplification, but his character here is much cooler, trust me. Anyways, Henry here goes on this long rant about his regrets following all of Afton's murders and the resulting possession of the animatronics.
It's only now that I understand the depth of the depravity of this creature, this monster that I unwillingly helped to create. It keeps me awake at night. I could make myself sleep, but not yet. Not until I undo what he has done and heal this wound. A wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this. He set some kind of trap. I don't know what it was, but he led them there again. He overpowered them again, and he robbed them of the only thing that they had again. I don't know how those tiny breaths of life came to inhabit those machines, but they will never find rest now, not like this. I have to call them all back, all of them, together in one place.
This sets up Henry's motivation for the true ending of the game. You see, this entire pizzeria was a trap set up to lure every possessed creature into one place, and to get rid of them all once and for all. During this insanity ending, you can see blueprints for a lot of the new things introduced in this game, and in Sister Location. For this game, you can see the audio lure you use during the nights, as well as Lefty. For Sister Location, you can see the scooper, and that blueprint gives some insight about how it works, as well as how all of the possession works. The scooper is designed to excavate and inject something called remnant. This metal substance is essentially the possessed metal. The actual possession comes from something else that's revealed in another book, but for now, we need to focus on the remnant. When an animatronic is possessed, its endoskeleton possesses remnant, and that's what the scooper was made to study. When Mike was scooped in Sister Location, he was injected with remnant, which is why he survived his time as a skin suit, and why he is here to be the protagonist of this game. Anyways, the last thing to note about this blueprint is that it says there's a possibility that overheating might neutralize the effects permanently. So, heating the remnant can entirely get rid of it. This all ties into the ending that you get when you salvage all the robots and actually upgrade your pizzeria. Rather than closing and going home afterwards, you're greeted with some voice lines from Baby before she gets cut off by the best ending monologue ever.
You played right into our hands. Did you really think that this job just fell out of the sky for you? No. This was a gift for us. You gathered them all together in one place, just like he asked you to. All of those little souls in one place, just for us. A gift.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name. But I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection, and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends.
It's so good. As he's giving the coldest monologue, Henry burns the pizzeria to the ground, and you can see Baby, Afton, and Freddy getting burned. In doing this, he ends up killing himself, releasing the remnant in Michael, allowing him to pass, and as well releasing the spirits in Baby, Freddy, and the puppet, as well as damning Afton to hell with this awesome line.
For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
God damn, that hits hard. Henry also speaks to his daughter, who is revealed to be the puppet. In this game, you can buy the security puppet for a shit ton of money. Playing this 4 times will unlock some lore. The minigame is centered around this security puppet, who is tasked to protect children with a green wristband. The first 3 times you play it, you'll find that none of the kids at this location have that green wristband. However, on the 4th play, you'll see the wristband on a kid who's stuck outside of the restaurant. She's being laughed at by some kids, who then run off to play, leaving her outside in the rain. The puppet is stuck in its box, but eventually it breaks out and goes outside to protect the kid with the green wristband. However, when it arrives, the little girl is already dead. Tire marks can be seen on the floor. The rain fries the puppet's electronics, and as its last act, it crawls towards the girl, resulting in her spirit possessing it. We know from the books that Henry's daughter is named Charlie, and that carries on over here. We also get confirmation that this minigame from FNAF 2 was the origin of the puppet, and that the puppet gave life to the animatronics. Also, something to take note of is that the security puppet doesn't have its tear streaks in the minigame, but after Charlie possesses it, the tear streaks are visible on every other version of the marionette. Anyways, Henry apologizes that he wasn't there to lift her up like she did to others, but now it's his chance to save her after failing so long ago. This gives you a certificate of completion, being the canon ending of the game, and giving the series a real conclusion. There is only one other certificate you can get, and that's the Lore Keeper certificate. You get this by playing 3 minigames and getting the hidden lore. The first minigame is the security puppet one, the next one is Fruity Maze. To get the lore in this, you have to beat it twice. The first time is entirely normal, and you can see a smiling little girl in the reflection each time you get a time extension. Once you beat it the first time, some of the fruit is replaced with a dead dog. Once you beat it the second time, you don't need to beat it again, but you do need to give it another play. This time, the items are entirely replaced with dead dogs, caskets, and flowers. Picking up the dogs will make you leave bloody footprints, and you can see in the reflection that the little girl has gone from being happy to crying. You can see Spring Bonnie around in the maze, and when you get to 10 seconds left, you can hear a car honking. It's not the scariest part of the game, or the series, but I feel like the sound design is really good, and I'm always unsettled every time the car horn starts playing as the countdown begins. Anyways, the last minigame is Midnight Motorists. This one game has caused so much confusion and debate in the community, and even to this day, there is no agreed upon answer as to what this was trying to say. You can access the minigame by driving through this opening in the road, and that takes you to a new minigame. You are in control of a purple car, driving around while it's raining. If you take a hard left into the middle of nowhere, you can come across a weird mound of dirt, and wait a minute, you're orange? Who the fuck is this? Well, wouldn't you know it, that is the question that nobody can answer. Anyways, there are theories that this mound of dirt is an unmarked grave for Elizabeth, as her death by the hands of Baby was completely covered up to save face. There were also theories that this mound of dirt represented the Twisted animatronics from the books, but I'm pretty sure that the Twisted ones are exclusive to that book. Anyways, you can take another left to visit this place called Junior's. Walking up to the green guy will result in a dialogue box turning you away from the building. The only other place to go is down, back to your house. When you get there, you see someone watching TV. They tell you not to bother someone else, as he's had a rough day, so you go and bother them anyway. You get mad that they've locked their door, and go to yell at them from outside the house. Going up to their window reveals that it's broken, with footprints leading into the bushes, as well as one set of animatronic footprints by the bushes. The person that you play as says that they've ran off to that place again, and they'll be sorry when they get back. Like I said, there's no agreed upon solution for what this minigame is trying to tell us. Who is this Mango Man? Is it even a guy? Who ran off to that place, and what is it? Who is the person watching TV? What is Junior's? Why are you banned from it? What the fuck is this minigame? I'll break down the general theories. In the game file, this minigame is listed as later that night. Considering the fact that it's raining in both this game and the security puppet one, as well as the tire tracks on the scene of Charlie's death, there are connections between her death and Midnight Motorists. Something that further supports this is that the FNAF 2 version of Charlie's death, you can see Afton show up in a purple car, and Midnight Motorists has you driving a purple car. This has led people to believe that Mango Man over here is Afton, who for some reason has switched from being shown as purple to orange. To go along with this theory, there's the assumption that the person watching TV is Michael. He's the only person we've seen watching TV, along with the fact that they're wearing a gray shirt, like Michael in FNAF 4. This means that the runaway child is the crying child, and the general assumption is that that place is a Freddy's restaurant. The only agreed upon aspect of this game is Junior's. Everyone thinks that it's a bar, and Mr. Mango has been banned there because he drinks too much. Some parts of this theory do make sense, like the connection between Charlie's death and this minigame, but there are other things that don't quite add up. Crying Child's death happens before Charlie's. We know this because of the Halloween update for FNAF 4. In that update, 5 animatronics are added to replace Nightmare Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Plushtrap, and Nightmare. These new animatronics are Jacko Bonnie, Jacko Chica, Nightmare Mangled, Nightmare Balloon Boy, and Nightmare Aeon. Scott made a very clear point to say that the characters in the Halloween update are all non-canon except for Balloon Boy. This means that the puppet, at the time of Crying Child's death, was not around. If Charlie dies after Crying Child, then he wouldn't be there to run away from the house. You could try to work around this by saying that Elizabeth is the runaway, except, no you can't, they expressly say that the runaway is a he. This also muddies up the timeline, because if the Crying Child is dead and there's no Elizabeth, who is the runaway? None of the Afton characters truly line up if we assume that Mango Man is William. An interesting theory that I saw the other day said that Mr. Mango is not actually a Mr., but a Mrs. Mrs. Afton, to be exact. Rather than William being an alcoholic while also being competent enough to kill multiple kids and build a bunch of death robots, Mrs. Afton is the alcoholic of the family, left to deal with a serial killer husband who devotes all his time to his work, and Michael, who is the only remaining child since Elizabeth and Crying Child died. The mound of dirt is still said to be Elizabeth's unmarked grave, and the other 2 people in the house would be William and Michael. Basically, the theory is that Michael, when running away from the house, was actually going to the FNAF 4 house to be tested on or tortured by William. I guess Mrs. Mango assumed that he's sneaking off for leisure, when he's really just being tormented by his psycho father. Anyways, that leaves William to be the guy at the TV. The theory goes like this. Mrs. Afton gets home after bar hopping, since she's banned from the one near their house. When she gets home, she finds her husband on the TV, who tells her to leave Mike alone because he's had a rough day. In reality, Mike wasn't having a rough day. William was just sloppy when trying to get Michael to go along with everything. You see, if Michael was truly running away, then the broken window would have been broken from the inside of the house. However, when you see the exterior, there are no glass shards in the floor, which means that the window was broken from the outside. The explanation for this is that William has been using the Spring Bonnie suit to threaten Michael into doing what he wants, and being a test subject for these nightmares. This night, however, William had to rush a little bit because Spring Bonnie's a Springlock suit and it was starting to rain. So William rushed to put the suit on, only stepping briefly out of the bushes, and he threw a rock at the window to alert Michael. Mike then left the house to go fulfill his torture quota, and William rushed to get out of the suit before the rain activated the spring locks. Due to this rush, William uses the rough day as an excuse to get his wife to avoid Michael's room, because he doesn't want her to get involved in his work. I think that this explanation makes sense, and there's one big reason why, but I will talk about that when I get there, which unfortunately won't be for a while. There's a really good explanation for why the TV guy, who was almost unanimously assumed to be Michael, is actually William, and that comes from Michael's monologue at the end of Sister Location.
They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
We know that Michael's speech here is directed at his father, so that establishes that before Michael rots into a literal purple guy, him and William had a striking resemblance, so much so that Michael kind of chuckles and scoffs at the idea of being compared to him.
They thought I was you.
Probably because he's heard it a lot. This means that in this minigame, the parallels to Michael could have been a nod to the fact that William and Michael resemble each other. On first glance, the person watching TV has a similar color scheme to Michael from FNAF 4. The gray shirt and skin color on both characters are quite similar, so this could be highlighting that similarity that Michael directly brought up in his speech. So, this theory fits a lot better than assuming Afton is Mango Man. There's also another theory I heard, that Mango Man is supposed to be Henry, and he's babysitting Michael, which is why he wasn't there to help Charlie when Afton killed her. This is also a decent theory, but it doesn't explain anything about the broken window, the guy who ran off, and where that place is. So until there's a bit more evidence, I'm personally going to stick with the Mrs. Afton theory. Anyways, as a quick side note, why does the most confusing minigame in this series have the best soundtrack? Getting these 3 lore minigames will result in an extra image of a graveyard. There are a total of 6 gravestones, 4 of which have names, 1 of which is covered by grass, and the last one is up on a mountain. The 4 names are Jeremy, Fritz, Susie, and Gabriel. The one on the mountain is Charlotte, or Charlie, which is Henry's daughter, and the last one is supposed to be Golden Freddy, but the name is hidden. These 6 names represent the core 4 animatronics, Golden Freddy, and the puppet. Anyways, the last thing of note is an animatronic thing that you can buy in the shop called Candy Cadet. He has a minigame, and very rarely when you play it, you can be told one of 3 stories. There's a story about a woman who is given a choice to save one of 5 orphans who are locked in rooms. She has 5 keys, but can only open one of the doors. In an attempt to save them all, she melts the keys together and ends up saving none of them. In another story, a man adopts 5 orphans and takes them home. He goes out to buy groceries and comes home to find that a burglar has come and killed all 5 children. He can only afford 1 coffin, so he stitches the 5 kids together and buries them all in one grave. The last story is about a kid whose snake is always hungry. The boy finds 5 kittens and takes them home in a shoebox. He knows that the snake might eat them, but can't bring himself to get rid of the snake. He thinks that maybe if the snake ate one of the kittens, its hunger would be satisfied, but he can't bring himself to choose one of the cats, so he leaves the snake's cage open, and over the course of 5 nights, the snake eats every kitten. Filled with regrets, the kid kills the snake, cuts it open, and stitches all the remains into one, and he leaves it in the shoebox. There's a common theme with each of these stories, and that's 5 things becoming one. Whether it's the 5 keys melted into one, or the 5 orphans who were stitched together and buried, or the remains of 5 cats stitched into one, it's always about 5 things put together and becoming one. The only explanation for this that I have seen so far is that it represents the remnant from the original FNAF 1 animatronics being melted together and becoming the Fun Times. This stems from that exact thing happening in the 4th Closet, which is the 3rd and final book in the Silver Eyes trilogy. However, I don't think that can possibly fit into the timeline without causing major problems, which I will explain when I try to put together a timeline. With that being said, there isn't anything else to cover for this game. It gives a really satisfying end to the story that was being told over the last 6 games, and it does a really great job at tying up loose ends. Other than Midnight Motorist and Candy Cadet, I don't really have any complaints for this game, and it's one of, if not my favorite in the series.
This game, like FNAF 2, is a game that throws a lot of shit at you, and leaves you to fend for yourself. It has 50 customizable characters, along with 6 secret animatronics, and multiple other secrets that you can access by setting certain animatronics to certain difficulties. Like the previous custom nights, you can choose the difficulty of each animatronic by setting them from 0 to 20. 0 is off, and 20 is the hardest difficulty available. The higher the AI level on the animatronic, the more points you get. The highest score available in this game is 10,600 because each character on 20 adds 200 points, and 50 animatronics totals 10,000 points. In 50-20 mode, a character called XOR will show up and add the 6 secret characters at a difficulty of 10. There are a lot of characters and a decent amount of lore to unpack, so let's jump into it. Along with the mechanics, I will be explaining the strategy that I've developed from years of playing this game. This works for everything up until 4720. I cannot guarantee it for 5020 because I have yet to actually try to beat it. Like, just look at this. Just like FNAF 2, it'll be much easier to explain everything by splitting them into groups. Now, as I was putting together the groups, I realized that there was a bit of overlap between some categories, so some characters may be listed twice. Before I start listing them though, there's a general mechanic that I need to explain. Basically, most animatronics will only be able to get into your office when the camera goes up.
There are some exceptions, which I will point out, but most of the time, as long as the camera is down, you cannot be killed. Let's start with the characters who can't kill you at all. This list includes Bonnie, Balloon Boy, JJ, Phantom Mangle, Phantom Freddy, Phantom Balloon Boy, Old Man Consequences, Phone Guy, Trash in the Gang, Helpy, L-Chip, and Funtime Chica. As the group name suggests, these guys are all the characters in the game that cannot directly cause a game over. Since this isn't a gameplay specific category, I won't explain all the mechanics yet. Anyways, like I said, these are the characters that cannot directly kill you, and having all of these guys on 20 difficulty will get you 2,000 points for free. Anyways, the next category is the Blackout animatronics. Like FNAF 2, this category consists of all the animatronics that enter the office and cause a blackout. This consists of Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, and Withered Bonnie. Also, like FNAF 2, you deal with these animatronics by putting on the Freddy mask when they appear. This game gives you a little more leeway for when you put on the mask. With the toy animatronics, they will move from the left or right of the screen and then stop in the middle. When they're in the middle, they'll twitch for a short period of time before they kill you. Withered Bonnie is the most like a FNAF 2 animatronic, because when he appears, you actually have to be quick to put the mask on. Anyways, onto the next category, which is the vent animatronics. This category consists of everyone who attacks from the front vent, which is Mangle, Withered Chica, Springtrap, Molten Freddy, and Ennard. Mangle and Withered Chica will silently move through the vents, and when they reach the door, they will never leave. You won't have to worry about this as long as you close the vent door whenever you use the camera. Anyways, the other three work via sound or visual cues. Ennard makes a squeaking sound, which sounds like this. Molten Freddy will laugh, and Springtrap will show his face in the vent. Closing the door on any of these three will reset them back to the starting position. Next up are the duct animatronics, which are made up of the mediocre melodies: Happy Frog, Pig Patch, Mr. Hippo, Orville Elephant, and Ned Bear. All 5 of these guys work the same, with the exception of 2 of them who have a simple quirk. You have 2 ways of dealing with them. You can either A, open the cameras and place an audio lure to keep them in a specific place, or B, turn the heater on to push them back. Happy Frog is immune to the heater, so she can only be stopped by using the audio lure, and Orville usually isn't fooled by the lure, and therefore the heater is the only guaranteed way to deal with him. The best way to deal with them is to set an audio lure at the start of the night, and then every subsequent time you flip the camera, use the heater for a few seconds. When you put the camera back down, you can turn the heater off or switch to the AC to lower the temperature. Next category on our list is the side vent animatronics. There are only 3 characters that use this vent: Balloon Boy, JJ, and Scrap Trap. Balloon Boy and JJ will both show their face in the side vent, and closing the door will reset them. If you have your camera up when they appear, or if you flip it up after they appear, they will get into your office. Balloon Boy, like in FNAF 2, will disable your flashlight. This time, however, it'll only be temporary, so after a while he'll disappear and go back into the vent cycle. JJ will disable your doors. Better hope that timed animatronics don't show up. Anyways, the last animatronic to use the vent is Afton. Unlike the other animatronics in the game, Afton will only ever show up once per night. Sometimes he might not show up at all. When he does, he will make a lot of noise and make your screen flicker. You have to shut the vent door until you hear a thud. Afton is one of the timed animatronics I was referring to. Anyways, next up we have the plush animatronics. This includes Baby, Nightmare Bonnie, and Nightmare Mangle. These guys will show up to your right door, but the door can't stop them. In order to deal with them, you have to spend 20 coins to buy their plushies. It's 20 coins per plushie, so collecting and buying those things is not a viable option when you get to harder challenges. Luckily for you, there's another way to stop them. All you have to do is set your camera to Cam 2, and they will never be a problem. Scott implemented multiple animatronics that you can camera stall, just like FNAF 1. Unlike FNAF 1, though, you don't have to use the cameras in order to stall them, you just have to select the right camera, and every animatronic there will be stalled. There are others that can be stalled like this, and I'll point them out as I come to them. Anyways, Cam 2 has the most animatronics that you can stall, so the strategy is to stall these guys for the whole night. Next up, we have the animatronics that are stopped by your left and right doors. This list includes Freddy, Nightmare Fredbear, Nightmare, and Ballora. Freddy will slowly move towards the left door and will kill you if he makes it to the door and you flip the camera up. This can be combated in two ways. One way is to just shut the door. He gets reset if you close the door on him. The other way is to cam stall him. When playing on harder difficulties, your camera will be on cam 2 for the entire night, so you can't cam stall Freddy. You also can't use the cameras to check his position, so the best strategy is to close the left door each time you flip the camera up. Just like the middle vent in the heater. Anyways, Nightmare Fredbear and Nightmare work exactly the same, but on opposite sides. Each of them will laugh when they show up at a door, and you can also see their eyes. All you have to do is close the door and they'll go away. The last door animatronic is Ballora. Her music will play on either the left or right side. You have to close the door of whichever side she is on. Ballora is another one of the timed animatronics I was referring to when talking about JJ. Anyways, next category is camera animatronics. These are animatronics that will only show up and be dealt with on the cameras. This list consists of Phantom Mangle, Phantom Balloon Boy, Foxy, Funtime Foxy, Toy Freddy, Rockstar Bonnie, Bonnie, the Marionette, and all of the plushies. You already know how the plushies work, so let's get to the others. Like FNAF 3, the two phantoms will appear on the cameras. If you stare at either of them for too long, they will appear in the office. Balloon Boy will jump scare you, and Mangle will enter your office and play her static noise, which increases the noise meter on the bottom left. Bonnie will only ever appear in Pirate's Cove, and if you look at him, he will temporarily disable the visuals on the camera. Foxy will also be in Pirate's Cove, sharing the spotlight with Bonnie. You can tell who is active based on a toy that appears on your office desk. In order to keep Foxy at bay, you have to look at Pirate's Cove when he's active. I don't actually know how to deal with him when including him in harder challenges. When I played the challenge Old Friends, I death coined him so that I wouldn't have to deal with him. I'm pretty sure that you can either get really lucky or really unlucky when it comes to Foxy's movements. When he escapes from Pirate's Cove, he enters your office piece by piece every time you flip up the camera. However, if you're unlucky, he can enter your office all at once and insta-kill you.
If we get a bird. Actually unreal, chat. Actually unbelievable. Foxy is supposed to come into your office piece by piece. You ever heard of that? He came in all at once.
On the other hand, though, you can get lucky and have him be in your office entirely, but just never end up killing you.
Chat, 2:15. Over 2 minutes before the end, we have full ass Foxy. So I had to do 2 flips with Foxy's head on the table, which is lucky.
It's all about luck, and I've never gotten lucky with him. Anyways, Toy Freddy is another animatronic that requires you to get lucky. Toy Freddy is playing Five Nights at Mr. Hugs, so you have to go to his camera and close the door on him. If Toy Freddy loses the game, then he'll kill you. You can get lucky with him, though. Every 10 seconds, Mr. Hugs will have a movement opportunity. If you're lucky, Mr. Hugs can get stuck on one camera, or you can just get lucky because Toy Freddy has a relatively low chance to kill you when the camera is up. He has a 10% chance to kill you every half second the camera is up, so if you flip the camera quickly, he has less of a chance to kill you. Alternatively, you can get so unlucky that you death coin him and get jump scared by him because he successfully had a movement opportunity. The next animatronic to look at is Funtime Foxy. He has his own Pirate's Cove, and he will be given a showtime. In order to deal with him, you have to look at his camera at his showtime. If he has a showtime of 2 AM, you have to switch to his camera at 2 AM. Alternatively, you could death coin him, which is a lot more convenient. You see, these last 3 animatronics that I just explained are probably the 3 most annoying animatronics in the game. They all have mechanics that require you to use the cameras, but you can't use the cameras when you have all the other shit coming for your ass when the cameras are up. Okay, here are the last 2 in this category. The Marionette works exactly the same as FNAF 2, except this time you can use the global music box to keep the music box wound up without having to change your camera. The last animatronic here is Rockstar Bonnie. He will sometimes appear in your office, and when he does, you have to look through the cameras to find his guitar. When you see it, click on it, and he'll go away. He is a death sentence if he shows up during a high difficulty run, but he only spawns on 13-second intervals, so just avoid flipping the camera up on those. On to the next category. We're almost done, guys, I promise. The next group we're looking at is office animatronics. This includes Nightmare Freddy, Nightmare BB, Nightmarion, Helpy, Rockstar Foxy, Rockstar Freddy, Scrap Baby, Phantom Freddy, and Golden Freddy. Nightmare Freddy works exactly the same as he does in FNAF 4. Just shine the flashlight when his Freddles are in the room and they'll go away. Same for Phantom Freddy. He can't kill you, but his jump scare is annoying, so shine the flashlight on him to get him to fade away for a little while. Scrap Baby will spawn in your office sometimes when you flip the camera down. When she shows up, she has an opportunity to move every time you flip the camera, and if she does, you need to click the button on the desk to shock her back to her normal state. Rockstar Freddy will stay dormant in your office and activate on rare occasions. He will ask for 5 coins. If you have 5 coins, great, you can pay him. If you don't, you can use the heater to disable him. Rockstar Foxy will send his parrot through the office. Usually, clicking on it will help you, but the higher the difficulty, the higher the chance he has to jump scare you. His parrot will also appear less frequently when you set his AI higher. Helpy will spawn on a higher ledge, and you have to click on him to get him to go away. If you don't, he will play an air horn and jump in your face. Nightmare BB will always be in your office, but sometimes when you flip the camera, he will sit up from his position. You have to shine your light on him. However, if you shine the light on him when he's sitting down, he will kill you. Nightmarion will show up in one of a few predetermined spots in your office. If you hover your cursor over him, he'll fade more into view. If he becomes fully visible, he will kill you. Last but not least, Golden Freddy has a chance to appear every time you flip the camera down. To get rid of him, you can either A, flip the camera back up, or B, put on your mask. The mask is less risky. Anyways, only 2 more categories. The next one I'm labeling as Other because none of these animatronics fit in with the other groups. This group consists of Music Man, Rockstar Chica, Old Man Consequences, Phone Guy, El Chip, Funtime Chica, Trash in the Gang, Chica, Lefty, and Jacko Chica. Music Man will become active if the office is too loud. He will crash his cymbals and get faster when he is closer to jump scaring you. All you have to do to avoid him is stop making noise when he crashes his cymbals. Rockstar Chica can appear at either the left or right doors. You have a wet floor sign in the office, and you have to use that to block her. However, she can be camera stalled on camera 2, so keep that wet floor sign on the left side and keep your camera on cam 2. Old Man Consequences will sometimes show up on your screen. You have to push C when the fish is over the plus to catch the fish. If you don't catch it, the cameras will be inaccessible for a period of time. Phone Guy will appear as a mute call button somewhere around the screen. If you don't press it, it will play a phone call, which results in some noise. Sometimes the mute call button will end up over the camera panel, which is worrisome. I've ended up putting on the mask before clicking the mute call button just to avoid an unnecessary death. El Chip will send ads which you can skip. You can skip it by pushing the skip button in the middle of the screen or by pushing enter on your keyboard. Funtime Chica will show up and take photos, which is just a distraction on your screen. Trash in the Gang will sometimes show up on the cameras, which blocks your view. They will also sometimes show up in your office, which will result in them whispering and then doing the same thing as Helpy, which is an air horn type noise and them getting in your face. Chica occupies the same camera as the marionette. She will be clashing pots and pans as long as she likes the music that's playing. If she gets tired of it, the clashing will stop and you have to switch the music. Alternatively, you can just use the global music box on 15-second intervals to make sure that Chica won't jump scare you. Lefty will get aggravated if the office is too loud or if it's too hot. He can be camera stalled or calmed down via the global music box. Paired with Chica, Lefty will never jump scare you. Last but not least for the customizable robots, we have Jacko Chica. She will activate as the room gets hotter. She will appear at both doors, and you have to close them both to get rid of her. However, if the office is above 100 degrees, the doors won't stop her. Anyways, now we can move on to our last category, the secret animatronics. This group is made up of Plush Trap, Nightmare Chica, Shadow Bonnie, Bonnet, Lolbit, and the Mini Renas. Plush Trap will show up on Funtime Foxy's camera, and you can flash the light to make him go away. Nightmare Chica will slowly close her mouth over you. To get her to go away, you have to turn on the AC. Shadow Bonnie will cause the office to go dark and block some of the animatronics, so you have to pay a bit more attention. Same with the Mini Renas, who block your view of the office. Bonnet will play a sound cue and walk along the office. You have to click on her nose before she makes it to the left side of the screen. Lastly, Lolbit will show up as a kind of ad, and all you have to do to get rid of them is type LOL on your keyboard. And that's that, all the animatronics you may have to deal with in any run of the game. As one last reminder, here is my strategy that works on challenges up to 4720. Avoiding Foxy, Funtime Freddy, and the Marionette. What you do is, start the game by setting an audio lure in the ducts. Switch back to the cameras and go to cam 8, where you need to find Mr. Hugs and close the door. Then, switch to camera 2 and close it. Now, the goal is to keep the cameras down for as long as possible. Every 15 seconds, turn on the global music box. When it isn't on, switch between the power generator and the AC and fan. You want to save as much power as possible, while also keeping the office below 100 degrees. Every 30 to 45 seconds, the ventilation will go off. You have to flip the camera up to reset it. So, every time you have to flip the camera up, you have to do 3 things. 1. Turn the heater on for a few seconds before you flip. 2. Close the middle vent. And 3. Close the left door. Once you've done this, flip the camera, reset the ventilation, and close the camera as fast as you can. You want to keep the camera up for as little time as possible. Anyways, that's what it boils down to. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's get on to the little bit of lore this game has. Each time you get a new high score, you get one of 2 cutscenes. You either get an anime-type story between Freddy and Foxy, who are total rivals. It's theorized that this rivalry between Freddy and Foxy represents the real rivalry between William and Henry. The other type of cutscenes that you can get are about Toy Chica in high school. She keeps on having crushes on different animatronics, and she keeps coming up with shady plans to lure them to her house. Each time, she ends up killing them and collecting pieces of them, which you can see in her bag. It's theorized that this set of cutscenes represents William luring and killing the kids in the missing children's incident. There are 7 total cutscenes for Toy Chica. 6 cutscenes where Chica lures and kills different characters, and one final one where she sits under a tree with parts from each character she killed. Before I get to the last major cutscene, there are 2 secrets that you can access by setting animatronics to certain difficulties. If you set Golden Freddy to level 1, you can get a secret jump scare by death coining him. This spawns in Fredbear and gets you a special jump scare, although it is just a reskin of FNAF 1 Freddy. Each animatronic in this game has voice lines that you can hear when you get killed by them. Fredbears are seemingly just garbled noise, but when you play with the audio files, you can make out what the voice lines are supposed to be. There's laughter, be sure to come back soon, there was more fantasy and fun where I came from, and let's find a suit that's right for you. They're quite difficult to make out, but when you can read the subtitles, you can definitely hear it. If I'm being honest, I haven't seen a theory that really gives any meaning to these voice lines, so as far as I'm aware right now, these are just fun Easter eggs. Anyways, you can get the other secret by setting Old Man Consequences to 1. If or when he appears, catching his fish will send you back to this little pond from FNAF World. Talking to him will reveal a bit of dialogue. Come and sit with me a while. Leave the demon to his demons. Rest your own soul. There is nothing else. All that's left to do is drown yourself like you did in FNAF World. The audio in this minigame, like Fredbear's voice lines, seems to be a garbled mess, but if you speed it up, it sounds like this. You can clearly make out the screams of someone, seemingly calling for Mike. This has been interpreted as William Afton screaming out as he's being tortured in hell. To further support this, when you die, you get some voice lines from the characters. Some of these voice lines refer to someone that you should not have killed. Since it's the animatronics who are saying this, the one you should not have killed has to be someone who possessed an animatronic. This means that, unless the crying child is the one you shouldn't have killed, which he isn't, the character you're playing as is William Afton, since he's the murderer. Anyways, back to the pond. The Old Man Consequences dialogue has some lore implications. He says, leave the demon to his demons and rest your own soul. This implies that whoever he is talking to here is keeping Afton trapped in some sort of purgatory, and Old Man Consequences is telling them to let it go. This is later revealed to be Golden Freddy, which you can find out if you beat 4920 mode. Getting this achievement unlocks a cutscene of Golden Freddy, twitching and fading into the distance. Whoever is possessing him clearly refuses to move on, and is keeping Afton trapped in this nightmare. This means that the person you're playing as every time you set a new challenge is William Afton. This custom night is his eternal purgatory, brought on by Golden Freddy. Anyways, there are a few voice lines that are worth mentioning. Getting killed by the mediocre melodies, excluding Mr. Hippo, will sometimes result in voice lines that are completely out of place. Here's an example of a regular voice line from one of them.
Everyone underestimates me, but then they turn their back and I'm like, boo! And they're like, what?
But then, there's a chance that you'll get something like this.
This is how it feels, and you get to experience it over and over and over again, forever. I will never let you leave.
You can also make out a faint whisper in the background, telling these animatronics what they should be saying. This whisper would be what the casting call refers to as Vengeful Spirit. It seems that we have found our Golden Freddy. Remember the logbook that was used to prove that Mike was the protagonist of FNAF 4? That same logbook has also been used to find the identity of Golden Freddy, and see what name is supposed to be on the gravestone from Pizza Sim. You see, this logbook is a gold mine of lore, because not only has it been used by Mike, but it was also being used by Golden Freddy and the Crying Child. You may be thinking, why would Golden Freddy and Crying Child be in the logbook? You may also be thinking, wasn't the Crying Child supposed to be Golden Freddy? And those are valid questions, which can be explained via a new theory. This theory stems from the epilogues of the Fazbear Frights novels. They tell the story of two kids named Jake and Andrew, who were killed or who passed away from cancer and went on to possess a robot created by a scientist named Dr. Taggart. He created an endoskeleton and brought it to life using agony. You see, this story also reveals how possessions work and how Remnant is created. Things get possessed when there are strong feelings involved. The strongest is agony, hence why all of the children who were murdered went on to possess their animatronics. William put them into agony, and their agony passed on to the animatronics they were stuffed into. Anyways, I wanted to explain that first. The actual point of the story that I wanted to talk about is that there are two boys who go on to possess this animatronic endoskeleton. In the continuity of the books, Andrew was killed by Afton and attached himself to him to make him suffer. When Afton was burned in the events of Pizza Sim, Andrew's spirit kept him alive. Afton's soul and Andrew's soul kept fighting for control, which resulted in Afton being kept in an eternal nightmare. I wanted to get back at someone who hurt me. I think I attached myself to him. I got into his soul, made sure he couldn't move on when he should have died. I wanted to make him suffer, the way he made me suffer. I hung on, no matter what they did to him, to try to save him. I wanted him to hurt! Clearly, this is a parallel to Golden Freddy, and how they are a vengeful spirit keeping William in a purgatory. What's interesting to look at is that this Golden Freddy parallel has two spirits within it. One is a vengeful spirit, while the other is a child who passed away in a hospital. If we take a look back at the games, we can draw connections to characters we've met before. Andrew clearly parallels our vengeful spirit from this game, someone who Afton should not have killed. Jake, however, is similar to the Crying Child. He died in a hospital, wasn't attacked by Afton, and isn't as angry as Andrew. Compare this to the Crying Child, who was never attacked by Afton, died in a hospital, as evidenced by the flatline at the end of the Night 6 cutscene, and before he died, he was a scared kid, not an angry one. So, we have our parallels. Now, we can make an educated guess that Golden Freddy has two spirits inside of it. That's great. You may be wondering, though, how does this relate to the logbook? Well, the vengeful spirit and the Crying Child are communicating through the logbook. We are seeing the two spirits within Golden Freddy having a conversation. We can see this because there are certain pages where the vengeful spirit will say something in faded text, and the Crying Child will respond by changing the text on certain pages. An example of this is when the vengeful spirit says, "The party was for you," on page 102. Crying Child responds by changing the text on page 89 and saying, "It was for me." Anyways, the point is, there are multiple pages in the book that have my name written in faded text. Since it's faded text, it's being written by the vengeful spirit. Each page that this text appears on has a numerical hint on it. Page 29 is incorrectly labeled as 52. Page 32 is labeled 39. Page 43 is labeled 15. A few pages later, the numbers 7 and 2 are doubled up in this survey question. On page 79, there are a set of coupons. Written under the text on the last one is Mike saying, "For real value, see page 61. Going back to page 61 shows Freddy and Foxy in front of a chalkboard that says 5 plus 4 and then 3, so 9 and 3. On page 85, the numbers 10 and 11 are red, and lastly, on page 108, Michael writes 8:11 as the time for an incident report. Listing all of these out, we have 52, 39, 15, 7, 2, 10, 11, 9, 3, 8, and 11. If you use each number as a coordinate in this word search, you can solve for the name of Golden Freddy. 5 and 2, C. 3 and 9, A. 1 and 5, S. 7 and 2, also S. 10 and 11, I. 9 and 3, D. And 8 and 11, Y. Cassidy. Cassidy is the name of our vengeful spirit. A little girl named Cassidy also appears in the fourth closet, which gives us the gender of Golden Freddy's second spirit. So there we have it. Our 6 victims from the Lorekeeper ending in Pizza Sim are Gabriel, Fritz, Susie, Jeremy, Cassidy, and Charlie. Anyways, this Golden Freddy theory of having 2 spirits also explains how Golden Freddy's spirit can be set free during FNAF 3's happiest day, while also being present to torture Afton after the Pizza Sim ending. We know that the happiest day was for Crying Child, so after that, Cassidy has full reign over Golden Freddy to do whatever she wants, whether that's moving on like Old Man Consequences suggested, or attaching herself to Afton to make him suffer. That's also why Golden Freddy doesn't appear to the character in any of the games following FNAF 2. Crying Child is no longer there to talk to his brother. Anyways, there's one final thing to clear up. Some of the voice lines refer to the one you should not have killed as a he. There's a good explanation for this though. If you look at the description for the Marionette in Ultimate Custom Night, it says, "Keep his music box wound," despite the fact that we know the spirit possessing the puppet is Charlie. So the puppet would be a she. This can be chalked up to the fact that the puppet animatronic is male, while the spirit possessing him is female. So using that as evidence, we can assume the voice line refers to the one you should not have killed as male because they're referring to Golden Freddy, which is a male robot, which still allows for the spirit to be female. Making our way to the next mainline entry, we've made it to the VR game. Help Wanted is the 8th mainline game, and it introduces a new storyline for the series to follow. Since Pizza Sim finished so many character arcs, and UCN showed us where William is after being burned, we're in need of something new to set up the next set of entries in the series. Help Wanted is here to bridge the gap between the old and new stories, by, literally and figuratively, being a blast from the past. It's a VR recreation of gameplay from the original games, along with some new challenges. This game has 41 levels, although most of those are made up of multiple nights of the same minigames. FNAF 1 has 5 nights, 2 has 6, 3 has 5, Dark Rooms have 8, same with Parts and Service, Vent Repair has 4, and Night Terrors has 5. Let's break down the games. FNAF 1 to 3 work basically exactly the same as they do in their respective games, with very minimal changes. I'm pretty sure you can't camera stall anyone in FNAF 1, there's no flashlight power in FNAF 2, and you can use the cameras while things are rebooting in FNAF 3. Overall, that makes FNAF 1 harder and the other 2 a lot easier. On the Nightmare/Blacklight versions of the games, there is a new mechanic for FNAF 1. The doors, on occasion, will open and shut rapidly, which would be very unfortunate if Foxy ends up attacking as the doors start spazzing out. Anyways, next section is Dark Rooms. This consists of VR remakes of Fun with Plush Trap and Balloon Boy from FNAF 4, walking through Funtime Auditorium from Sister Location, and a new minigame where you have to deal with these annoying ass motherfuckers. Plush Baby is the bane of my existence. I got this game in February 2020, and I didn't beat this level until November or December of 2020. It took me almost a year to beat it, and that was only the first one. It took me even longer to beat the Nightmare version. I only beat it in January of 2023, so it took me basically 3 years to fully beat this game. Basically, to beat this minigame, you have to shine your flashlight at a plush baby that will be hiding around the room. As you get later in the night, more plush babies will spawn. There are a total of 3, and if you don't catch all of them within a specific amount of time, you die. In the Nightmare version, the plush babies appear as Scrap Baby, and they hide among shelves full of regular plush babies. Same premise, just a lot harder. The other 3 minigames I mentioned work exactly the same as they do in the games they come from. For Plush Trap and Nightmare BB, you have to shine the light periodically, and you win when you catch them on the X. In their Nightmare versions, they work the same way, although for Plush Trap you shrink, and for Nightmare Balloon Boy, the room is filled with balloons that make it harder to see. For Funtime Foxy's minigame, the normal version is exactly the same as Sister Location, except it's now a 3D environment, so you can move in any direction you want to. In the Nightmare version, the room is littered with animatronics that you have to avoid. I'm also pretty sure that you can't stand still for too long, because there were a few points in my playthrough where I stopped moving temporarily and got killed for seemingly no reason. Anyways, next category is Parts and Service. For these minigames, you have to get up close and personal with the core 4. For Bonnie, you have to remove his eyes, open his faceplate, and tune his guitar. For Chica, you have to pick pizza off of her and put her arm and cupcake back on, and then catch the cupcake. This one is basically a repeat of Funtime Freddy's Repair in Sister Location. Freddy's Repair has you pulling children's items out of his mouth and chest cavity, and Foxy's has you matching eye colors and fuses. The Nightmare versions are exactly the same, just harder to see. Next up, we got Vent Repair. In this first minigame, you are put in an elevator along with 3 vents that open as you progress. First, you push a button, which then opens a little hatch that lets you flip a switch. Then, you flip another switch, which opens another hatch, which lets you flip another switch. It's groundbreaking, I know. Then, the pipes in the elevator start leaking, and you have to turn 2 valves and then push a button, and then, get this, flip another switch. Last but not least, you have to play Simon Says, push 4 buttons, and then flip a switch. And you're done. You can hear Mangle crawling through one of the 3 open vents throughout the night. If you look at her, he'll go away. If you don't look at him, then she'll kill you. Next up is Ennard's Vent Repair. This one has 3 minigames spanning over 3 levels. The first set is a game of match the buttons. You have to look at these boxes with lights and see which button it corresponds to via a series of overlapping wires. At first, you do this with the boxes being right up against the wall. Then, they move a bit further away, and then lastly, you have to peek through the vent to see which box connects to each button. If you push the wrong buttons too many times, you die. On the second floor, you have a gear puzzle. You start off with a small gear, and putting that in place gives you a bigger one. You then have to move around the small and medium gear to get a large one, and then you put all 3 together and you're done. On the last level, you have to move these pipes around in order to properly fit them in the surrounding pipes. You do this twice, and then push a button that sets off the burner. In the progress, you seemingly burn Ennard along with it. The Nightmare versions are practically the same. In Mangle's level, there's a dark Mangle that attacks along with normal Mangle. Ennard's level is flipped upside down in the VR version of the game, but in the flat version, a bunch of animatronic heads are added to make it harder to see the wires in the first segment. That brings us to our last category, Night Terrors. This is the FNAF 4 segment of the game, but instead of being a recreation of FNAF 4, it's a bunch of levels inspired by FNAF 4, with the exception of Nightmare Fredbear, which is just FNAF 4 Night 5. The other levels are Funtime Freddy, Baby, and Nightmarion. You may be thinking, isn't Nightmarion from FNAF 4? Yes he is, but he has a different gameplay mechanic this time. Let me go in order. Funtime Freddy works like both Nightmare Bonnie and Chica. He will go down either the left or right halls. You can catch him at the end of the hall, in which case he'll go back behind the wall, or if he ends up at the door, you'll hear breathing, which means you have to close it. There's also Bonbon and Bonnet, which I'm not 100% sure how they work in this game. I know that Bonnet will appear in the bedroom and she jump scares you if you don't shine the light on her. However, Bonbon will show up in the halls and stay there. And I don't even know how he gets in the room to jump scare you, so I can't explain it. Bonbon and Bonnet won't kill you. They only serve as distractions, so Funtime Freddy is the only real threat. Nightmarion is a mix of Bonnet from this game and his original mechanic from FNAF 4. He will appear in either hallway, in which case you have to close the door before he gets to it. However, his tentacles will also appear in your bedroom, so you have to shine the light on those to get them to retract. Yuck. Baby changes it up a little bit. This time, you're in the closet and Baby is looking around the bedroom to find you. When she spots you, you have to close the door. However, keeping the door closed will cause a bunch of plush babies to kill you. So all you have to do is hold the door shut for about 5 seconds and repeat that process until 6 AM. Anyways, like I said, Nightmare Fredbear works exactly the same as he does in FNAF 4. The Nightmare versions of these levels are non-existent because there's only one Nightmare Night Terror level, and that's Pizza Party. For this game, you have to navigate your way through a bunch of doors which lead you to a back room with cake and pizza. As you eat, a golden rabbit opens the curtains and invites you back there with him. The screen goes black, and then the curtains open, revealing that you have been stuffed in a Freddy Fazbear suit, and you can't do anything, as the Golden Bunny dances around to the music that you will never be able to escape from. This is honestly a chilling ending, and it's one of my favorite horror moments from the franchise. Anyways, this is only one of 3 endings, so let's get into the lore! The opening cutscene reveals that this VR experience is a real game in the FNAF universe. After a rogue indie developer made a series of games that tarnished Fazbear's brand, the company took it upon themselves to make a VR game that looks back at all of these fictitious games as a way to clear the air about how they were all lies. Keep that in mind. Anyways, the game is in development, and it has recently been passed down from a previous development team. Scattered throughout the different minigames are a bunch of glitching purple tapes that you can interact with to collect. Accompanied with these tapes is a tape player that you need to knock over from the prize counter in order to actually listen to the tapes. You may notice, however, that as you start to collect these tapes, this glitching rabbit begins to appear behind you. He has the exact same design as Afton from the end of the Pizza Party minigame. Huh. Anyways, there are 16 tapes, and they all tell the story of the beta testing of this virtual experience. This girl that made the tapes has hidden them away so that she could get a warning out to the next development team, which is us.
I had to hide these logs away from the core gameplay files, in a place that only a beta tester would look, and in a place where the files could be protected. I just really hope that the next development team finds this before the game is released to the public. This game has some kind of malicious code in it that we haven't been able to fully contain or even understand for that matter.
So there's something bad hiding in this game, which is obviously that glitching rabbit I pointed out earlier. It came from old circuit boards that Fazbear Entertainment supplied to the development team. There was usable code on those circuit boards, which resulted in this digital manifestation of Afton. Anyways, listening to these tapes gives you a broader understanding of what's going on. The girl on the tapes is taking over beta testing after her predecessor, Jeremy, sliced his own face off using a guillotine paper slicer. As he was testing the game, he started noticing something, and brought it up to management, only to be dismissed. He kept obsessing over it though, becoming pale, he barely ate, he had nightmares, and spent all of his time testing the game. The company knew that he had seen something, so they started writing him up for minor things in an attempt to fire him. As the tape girl was preparing for her turn as beta tester, she noticed that Jeremy was acting weird.
He doesn't even jump anymore, nothing scares him. He just stands there like he's talking to someone.
So, we have a glitching rabbit that's seemingly a digital manifestation of Afton, a warning that says Fazbear Entertainment isn't responsible for digital conscious transference, and Jeremy seemingly talking to someone while playtesting this game. I wonder what's going on here. Anyways, listening to more of the tapes reveals that Tape Girl witnessed the aftermath of Jeremy slicing his face off. It was dark, so she thought that the blood was ink and his severed face was a Halloween mask. She realized that Jeremy was there and noted that
he had ink spilled on himself as well. The front of his shirt looked black in the dark room. He turned his head in my direction, but I don't think he knew I was there.
Anyways, as we go on through the tapes, we learn that there's likely a lawsuit going on due to Jeremy's death. The company is selling the game, the malware has attached itself to the tapes that we are currently listening to, and as it turns out, that rogue indie developer was actually hired by Fazbear Entertainment to make light of the tragedies via a series of games. This is later expanded upon in some books, I'll get there. Anyways, tape 11 of 16 tells you that the malware attached itself to the logs, and then Tape Girl proceeds to try to delete them. Unfortunately, due to her creating a safe and hidden spot for the logs, she's unable to get rid of them, which means that this thing is here to stay. Tape 14 tells us that she fragmented the logs in an attempt to keep the malware away from the core gameplay. When we get to tape 15, the Tape Girl reintroduces herself and tells us to hide all traces of her logs. Unfortunately, when this warning comes up on the second last tape, it's a little bit hard to uncollect the tapes that we just spent so damn long trying to find, because she told us to. Anyways, there's at least one tape in this bunch that isn't actually from Tape Girl. We know that she couldn't delete the logs, and she said that there wasn't a way to get rid of the rabbit, only for her to switch her story up on tape 16. She says that there is a way to get rid of it, and she gives you instructions. You have to let it start merging with you, then flip a switch and push a button to hard flush the game files and kill it. If you fail to do this, the rabbit just ends up merging with you and you get put into its body, then taken to the game over screen. If you successfully do it, you get taken to a cutscene where you end up in a locked room. The rabbit, no longer glitching, opens a little hatch, shushes you, and then moves off into the darkness, leaving you trapped. So, those are the three main endings of Help Wanted. All of them are bad endings, which reinforce the same ideas. You either get stuffed into Freddy, which traps your soul in the robot while Afton is free, or you get trapped in the rabbit's body, or you get trapped in this dungeon while Afton is free. No matter what ending you get, you're trapped and Afton is free. You may have noticed that I keep referring to this rabbit as either the rabbit or malware. There's a reason for that, which I will get to, but for the context of this game, the malware is a digital manifestation of Afton. Fans dubbed this version Glitch Trap. Anyways, getting the dungeon ending turns Glitch Trap from a glitching rabbit into a glitching rabbit plushie, which will always be by the desk in the main menu. Later on, Halloween DLC was released, which added a few extra minigames. I haven't beaten them all, but there are a few that are just reskins of minigames from the base game. There are a few standouts though, and one minigame in particular comes with lore. You see, in the corn maze, there's a hidden secret. Usually, the minigame doesn't last too long, as you would find one of the keys and then escape through the door that matches it, or you die. However, if you collect all of the keys, a fifth one will spawn somewhere in the maze. You have to find it, and then use it to open a hatch to the basement. This brings you into an area where you can find a mask. Putting it on here does nothing. However, when you go back to the main game, it will appear on the prize counter. You can also bring the Glitch Trap plushie to the prize counter by picking it up and going there. Putting the mask on while holding the plush will give you one side of a conversation. You can hear a female voice saying,
Yes, I hear you. I know. No. There's no miscommunication. I understand. Yes, I have it. I made it myself. I think you would like it. No one suspects anything. Don't worry. I'll be ready. And I won't let you down. It will be fun.
Whoever's mask this is has clearly been taken over by Glitch Trap and is following in Afton's footsteps. Anyways, one last Easter egg can be found if you go back to Pizza Party. Instead of following Afton behind the curtain, you can turn to the right and see an open door. Going through this will take you outside where you can see a new building that's under construction from Fazbear Entertainment. Both of these are teasing the next mainline game in the series, but we still have some things to break down from this game. Firstly, let's talk about the indie game developer that was hired by Fazbear Entertainment. People have used this to say that the past games are no longer canon, the series was given a hard reboot, and that we no longer know what information is accurate. I'm here to tell you that this is 100% wrong, and the introduction of these in-universe FNAF games does not actually invalidate any of the other games. Let me explain. In the Tales from the Pizzaplex book series, there's a story called Help Wanted. It follows a guy named Steve who works at a gas station, since his career in game development hasn't taken off. One day, a Fazbear employee offers him a job to make some games based on accusations against the company. He refuses at first, but then is kidnapped, and the sound illusion discs are used to make him think that he has his dream life, but him and his family are at risk of losing their home. So he takes the offer from Fazbear Entertainment and makes 3 games for them. He starts work on a 4th one, but comes to realize that the life he's been living is a lie. He's convinced to stay in the fabrication and ends up getting stabbed as he embraces his fake wife. The takeaway from the story is that he created 3 games and started working on a 4th. I'll be lenient and round it to saying that the first 4 games in the series aren't canon because they're in-universe games made by Steve. I'm going to disprove that right here, right now. 1. We don't actually know what the gameplay of these games are, so there's no information directly connecting the 4 games from Help Wanted to FNAF 1 through 4, other than the gameplay from the Help Wanted game. 2. There is plenty of evidence that proves that the first 4 games are 100% factual. Sister Location alone has psychic friend Fredbear from FNAF 4, as well as the main bedroom and plush trap hallway. That means that FNAF 4 has happened. Along with that, we have the final cutscene that shows Springtrap and Fazbear's Fright, which means that FNAF 3 is canon. Pizza Sim's canon ending shows the FNAF 2 location and the Puppet Death minigame, which means FNAF 2 is canon, and Ultimate Custom Night shows the Vengeful Spirit in the golden Freddy suit from FNAF 1. So it's definitely safe to say that the first 4 games in the series are still canon and accurate to the lore, and whatever games Steve made aren't the same as the first 4 games in the series. And the last thing I want to talk about is the existence of Glitchtrap. Is it Afton? Is it a virus? Is it AI? Well, almost all the signs in this game point towards it being Afton's spirit, which manifested itself in the only way it could, a glitching sprite of the existing Spring Bonnie suit made for the end of Pizza Party. There is a bit of evidence pointing towards that. The circuit boards sent by Fazbear Entertainment could have had a remnant as Afton's agony spread from his time in the Springtrap suit. He takes the form of a yellow rabbit with a purple bow tie and purple eyes, matching the original color scheme of Spring Bonnie. Eventually, there will be a lore reveal that recontextualizes the evidence here, but until we get there, we're dealing with the return of good old William Afton, who has broken out of his digital prison and is now persuading the woman with the bunny mask to follow in his footsteps. Let's see where the story goes from here. This game is a spin-off made by Scott for a charity stream hosted by MatPat. There isn't that much to talk about, but it's one of the games made by Scott, so I'll give it a quick rundown. This is a side-scroller action game following Freddy as he fights against LOL's hacks to regain control of his space station and save his friends from mind control. I'm going to circle back to this plot in a later segment, but for now, it's not all that important. There are 4 levels, each holding 1 or 2 characters that you will have to rescue by finding various things around the levels. There's a 5th level that is just 3 boss fights in a row. As you win boss fights, you level up, which you are going to need if you want to beat the final boss. This guy has a metric shit ton of health, and it takes years to beat the final battle. It's not particularly hard, it's just tedious. There are also a bunch of power-ups like the asteroid field, the black hole gun, etc. They are a lot more fun than just shooting, although you will run out of them very quickly. Since the game was made for MatPat's charity stream, it was deliberately made to be tedious and confusing, so it makes for a somewhat annoying playthrough as you desperately try to figure out where the fuck you're supposed to be going. Anyways, nothing much to talk about. There's hidden lore, but it means nothing until we get later into the storyline, so I'll explain its relevance when it actually becomes relevant. Next game! Here we go with another spin-off. Scott made this one because of all the delays that Security Breach was being faced with. This game is a 20-minute long arcade-style beat-em-up where you can play as the cast of Security Breach. You can choose between playing as Freddy, Roxy, Monty, or Chica. Monty is the strongest, Freddy has the most stamina, Roxy is the luckiest, and Chica has the best special attack. There are 4 levels, and they're all relatively easy. Sometimes you can get bombarded with enemies, but you're in luck. Your special ability lets you hit enemies on either side of you, and you also have the ability to call Scott himself for help. There isn't much to talk about for this game, because there's no real story. It starts with a cutscene of Scott in bed thinking about how he has to delay Security Breach, and that's about it. That is the extent of the story. All the characters have the same attacks, the levels all follow the same structure, so yeah, next game. It is time. We have reached the most divisive entry in the series. You may recall my initial video on the game saying that I had a good time with it, even though it had a lot of problems. And I've still mostly continued with that, except for a few playthroughs that really soured my opinion. But first, I will give a brief rundown of the period leading up to its release. In August of 2019, the first teaser was released, showcasing the 80s vibes of the Pizzaplex, as well as our first look at the animatronics. It's really interesting because you can see just how much the game changed from this first look 4 years ago. The animatronics are a lot more bulky than they are in-game. If you look at Freddy over here, he looks a lot more like Toy Freddy than the in-game model of Glamrock Freddy. Monty's mohawk looks a lot more like it's part of the animatronic shell rather than hair, and the animatronics just generally look like they evolved a lot since this original teaser. The Pizzaplex itself also changed. You can see from this image, the atrium is 2 stories rather than 3. Phaser Blast is just called Laser Tag, etc. I remember reading somewhere that the Pizzaplex was originally intended to be 2 stories total, but then Scott and Steel Wool just kept on adding to the game, and now the building has 7 stories, and just so happens to be built on top of the remains of the Pizza Sim building, which you can access and briefly explore. Anyways, back to the game's history. The first teaser said that the game would be released sometime in 2020, which we all know wasn't actually the case. Anyways, the next teaser of Freddy shows a model that is much closer to the one in the game, although the head still looks more like Toy Freddy to me. During the marketing for this game, Scott also teased Freddy in Space 2, which ended up being a way for him to hide a change in the image. You see, originally, this Freddy teaser was just for Freddy, but when Scott re-uploaded it following the Freddy in Space teaser, you could zoom in and notice the silhouette of someone with bunny ears holding a knife. If you turn this image into a text file, you can find the name of this mysterious bunny. Her name is Vanny. As MatPat pointed out in his theory, this name is short for Vanessa, while also including the end of Bunny. So, since she was teased at the end of Help Wanted, people were excited to see this new villain for the series. Anyways, the first real look at the game came when a teaser trailer released in September of 2020. It showed a few locations in the game, as well as having some dialogue from Vanny, Freddy, and a jump scare at the end. That was a tradition from the FNAF trailers at this point. Anyways, it's crazy to look back and see just how much of the game changed from its early teasers. Freddy and Vanny sound entirely different in this trailer than they do in-game.
Gregory, your friends are worried about you.
Are you having fun yet?
Gregory, be still. I think she's found us. Gregory, you have a choice to make.
Anyways, not too long after this trailer came the first delay. Scott went on Reddit and told everyone that they were cooking and that the game was going to come out early 2021. Until it got delayed again. Instead of early 2021, it would be coming late 2021, but it was all in an attempt to make the game better. But we all know how that turned out. The delays only resulted in a game that was massive, but it had more bugs than Australia. But I already talked about this, so let's take a look at some more. When you go into a charging station, no matter what, the charge will lag behind, meaning that you will get out of the recharge station and the power level will stay where it was for a few seconds until the game finally catches up. During the mission where you have to run the Showtime disc, Monty appears on top of this little hut where he is manning a spotlight. If you proceed to deload the atrium in any of several different ways, this Monty will fall through the roof and end up on the ground. Now, this Monty has no AI, other than the basic programming of chasing and killing the player. This means that, if you get caught, this version of Monty will lock onto you and never let you escape. Nothing you can do will get Monty to leave you alone, not even getting into Freddy. You cannot escape him. This also shows that the programming on the actual roaming animatronics makes them stupid, because they program them to easily lose the player and then walk away. Oh, and if you get jump scared by this version of Monty, you get teleported into the ground. In the original patch of the game, you were able to duplicate him infinitely by unloading and reloading the atrium multiple times, but that seems to have been patched, so you can only spawn in one. For whatever reason, they patched the duplication, but they didn't patch the unintended enemy. Wow. Also, on the Showtime level, if you put the Showtime disc in, go down a level, and then go back up, you can find Vanny almost skipping in place. I ran into this on my most recent playthrough, and was so confused that she didn't see me once. Anyways, this happened. I'm not 100% sure that this is a glitch, but in the remains of the Pizza Sim restaurant, there's a hole that you have to navigate through to get to the Afton fight. When I was going there, I accidentally managed to get on the outer rim of the hole and fall straight past the intended path to get to the cutscene. When trying to go to Bonnie Bowl, I called Freddy to the elevator, but he just disappeared. I ran out of the elevator to find him, and I got caught by a staff bot, so I ran back into the elevator and pushed the button. Once I did, Roxy phased through the unopened door on the other side of the atrium. Now, I initially assumed that on the other side of that door was just void, but I wasn't sure of that, so I downloaded something that would let me go out of bounds. I went to check, and lo and behold, I was right. Roxy spawned on this tiny platform when every other area of Bonnie Bowl hadn't loaded in yet. This is on the latest update, by the way, which I installed the day before this glitch happened. Anyways, to top it off, it turns out that calling Freddy spawned him in Bonnie Bowl, despite the fact that I called him from the atrium when he was in the atrium. This game works extremely well. There are a bunch of other glitches that I didn't know about when I made my video 2 years ago. In the elevator leading down to the kitchen and docks, Freddy will sometimes disappear. This happened to Markiplier when he first played the game, but it can still happen in the latest version. The gift box that gives you Mr. Hippo's magnet will respawn in the main area, but you can't interact with it despite Freddy highlighting it as an unopened gift. When you go to the security office in the prize counter, if Roxy has been destroyed, she will not attack you. She just stands out in the arcade area and doesn't move. In the Afton ending, the entire fight can be cheesed by positioning Freddy in the door and letting him block the animatronics. He can block Chica and Roxy, and by blocking either of them, it will make it so that the blob will never attack you, which makes the fight a lot easier. The way the fight is programmed, the animatronics can only attack one at a time, and once they've all attacked, the blob will start sticking out of the sewer grates. However, blocking one of the animatronics at the door will make it so that they get stuck at the door, and since they haven't properly been dealt with, the other animatronics won't attack you. However, setting this up is a son of a bitch, because Freddy is programmed to run out of battery almost immediately after you get into him during this boss fight. Anyways, according to Retrospective, 50% of the time, the scream from Chica's voice box won't get rid of Roxy during the Afton fight. I'm not sure if it's accurate, but I know that this happens sometimes. There was also this glitch from Markiplier's attempt at beating the Afton fight. I don't know if this can still happen in the current patch, as I've never been able to recreate it. There are so many goddamn glitches in this game. It's genuinely insane. There's a really good video that outlines all the glitches. It's also from Spiff, and it's decently long, but very interesting. I'll link it in the description if anyone is interested. Anyways, moving on from the glitches, let's just talk about the game. The gameplay is a whole lot of nothing. All you do is run around, dodge animatronics, press E a lot, and that's about it. Around midway through the game, you get the Phaser Blaster or the Phaz camera. As I said in my original video, the Phaser Blaster is the better choice because the camera is complete and utter garbage. It takes decades to recharge, and you can only use it once. This means that when you go to the Music Man boss fight, you are royally fucked, since there are two animatronics who are constantly being teleported to you, and you can only defend yourself once every 5 years! The camera makes the game incredibly hard, but the Phaser Blaster makes the game incredibly easy, since you have a lot more uses from it. Here, you can see me desperately struggling to reset the arcade because I made the dumb choice to kill Monty first. Anyways, since I made my original video, an update came out where they added a singular save station that works past 6 AM. It's very useful, but it's also dumb that they decided to add one save station instead of having no saves as a challenge mode. I feel like it would have been a lot better to have a separate difficulty where you can choose to disable saves. That would make it a lot more fair. I feel like that is the biggest problem with this game. Rather than being a game that is trying to scare you, like a horror game should, it's a game that stresses you out. The gameplay isn't nearly as challenging as it could have been because the animatronics will lose sight of you when you run around anything in a circle. The Phaser Blaster makes it nearly impossible for you to get caught by Roxy, Chica, or Monty when he gets destroyed. If you do happen to get caught by one of them though, you're in luck, because using the camera or Phaser Blaster during a jump scare will cancel it and let you live. Apparently it's a mechanic called camera cancelling, but I also just found out that it also works with the Phaser Blaster, so camera cancelling isn't an accurate name. It really is a disappointing gameplay loop, because all you have to do is run around, get lost, find where you're supposed to be going, and then push E. The best area in terms of gameplay is the Monty boss fight, because you have no guaranteed way to defend yourself against him. And there is more gameplay than just push button and do thing. I know that I kinda bashed on the boss fight in my other video, but that was when there was no save. Gameplay wise, this boss fight is the most game that you'll ever get out of this. Compare this to a fan game called The Glitched Attraction. It's relatively short with only 6 levels, although a couple of them are split into sections, so I'd say it's more like 8. Each level is a different puzzle, which also gives you mechanics to deal with the animatronics. It takes the free roam aspect of Security Breach and combines it with the need to keep track of your surroundings like the original games. It's actually a really good combination of gameplay styles, and I wish that Security Breach was more like this. The different levels introduce different gameplay aspects and different ways to fend for yourself against the animatronics, which gives the players a fun challenge as they have to learn new mechanics and actually pay attention to the game. I have beaten Security Breach over 6 times, and most of the times I've done it, I did it without sound. There is rarely ever a need to pay attention to what's going on around you, because you know when an animatronic is near. They always teleport to you because instead of designing a reliable system where the animatronics roam and find you, they mass produce these annoying ass staff bots that just teleport the animatronics directly to you. The Monty glitch is an example of an animatronic that would actually make the game challenging in a fun way, as you have to constantly stay ahead of them when there is nowhere to hide. Too bad it's just a glitch, because Steel will program the animatronics to be much dumber than this version of Monty. The animatronics never feel like a threat, because they're so easy to deal with. And, you may have noticed that I didn't even bring up Vanny, and that's because she was barely in the game at all. She shows up a total of 4 times during the gameplay, and then has 2 endings entirely dedicated to her. She has no presence in the game outside of showing up for 2 seconds in sections that are so easy to deal with. In every playthrough I've done, I usually only see Vanny twice, and they're both scripted events that force you to see her. Anytime she shows up as a threat, you can play the game in a way that makes it so that she will never even get close enough to see you. They completely wasted her after using Help Wanted and the mobile game to set up her story. Anyways, there isn't much else to talk about for the gameplay. The Pizzaplex itself is designed quite well, but I don't feel like it has a horror atmosphere. It accomplishes the goal of making it seem like a really cool place to spend time at, but this is supposed to be a horror game. This neon aesthetic doesn't facilitate a feeling of dread, it just looks cool. In the original release on the PS4, a beta version of the game was actually hidden inside the game files. This version was extracted and ported to PC as well, and in it, you can find a version of the game where the lighting actually looked like a horror game. Look at this. This gives the impression of a kid being trapped overnight in a mall that's closed. When I'm in a store that's closing, they usually start to pack up and turn things off. In this game, all areas of the Pizzaplex are on and fully operational, despite the fact that it's closing for a few days for scheduled maintenance. Anyways, before we get to the story, I just want to summarize. The camera sucks, the game is still a glitchy mess 2 years later, the gameplay is quite basic, especially when you can compare this big budget game to a fan game made by 2 developers that have vastly superior gameplay. Despite this, I do still find Security Breach fun, and I've gotten quite good at beating the game with minimal deaths. Now, let's move on to the story of the game. There isn't that much to work with. There is the basic story, which is, after Freddy malfunctions during a performance, he discovers Gregory hiding in his chest cavity and helps him navigate the Pizzaplex and survive until 6 AM, so he can escape. In terms of hidden lore, there are a lot of hints, but there's no substance. With the other games, you can piece together the things that are being told to you, but with this game, they throw a bunch of shit at you with no real structure to figure out what it all means. Here's what the game throws at you with no further context. Every animatronic wants to kill Gregory, except for Freddy, who goes against all of his friends to protect you. There is no real explanation for this, even Freddy doesn't know why.
This is crazy. It's like the whole place is trying to get me.
I am not.
Why?
I do not know.
If you choose to stay past 6 AM, you can find CDs around the Pizzaplex using Roxy's eyes. These are recorded therapy messages for 2 patients, patients 71 and 46. Patient 71 is Vanessa, the security guard for the Pizzaplex, and also Vanny. You can also piece together that patient 46 is seemingly Gregory. In Vanessa's tapes, you learn about her parents' divorce and how her father made her lie in court so he would get custody. These tapes also bring up emails and search history that was first brought up in the mobile game, which isn't all that important other than these emails between a guy named Lewis and a woman named Ness, who we can infer is Vanessa. The tapes for Gregory are a lot weirder. Gregory is said to be an expert with technology. He's apparently appeared on security footage talking to someone or something with rabbit ears, and there are chat logs of encrypted messages, but the therapist believes that he was using those encrypted messages to manipulate someone rather than him being manipulated. There's also the fact that the therapists have a tendency to go missing when they get too close to figuring things out. Patient 46 is never surprised by this fact, implying that he's responsible for their fates. One of the more recent books in the series has a story called GGY. This story is about a kid named Greg who is really good with technology, successfully having hacked the robots at the Pizzaplex, and he has all the high scores on the Pizzaplex arcade machines. You can see this in the games. It's also revealed that Gregory was working with Afton and Vanny before the events of Security Breach, so it's theorized that Gregory, like Vanny, was infected by Glitch Trap in Help Wanted, but somehow escaped it by the time Security Breach happens. Got all that? Great. I hope you guys can make more sense of it than I can, because I genuinely don't know what this is all supposed to be telling us. There's the fact that Gregory hacked the robots, which is seemingly telling us that Gregory is the reason that the animatronics are so aggressive in the game. However, the books and the following game tells us a different story, so I really don't know how these therapy tapes fit into the bigger picture. Anyways, moving on, there's also a specific room that you have to get into to listen to these therapy tapes. If you go back to the tunnels from the beginning of the game, you can use Monty's claws and Chica's voice box to open a series of fences, and that will lead you to this highlighted rectangle. Using the camera, you can open the wall. Yeah. And that reveals Mike's room from Sister Location. I don't even know, I got nothing. There's a code written on the wall in this room, which is written with a bunch of lines and triangles. I'm not entirely sure on how it was deciphered, because when researching it, I found codes and ciphers that I don't really understand, but nevertheless, it was translated. The message says, "Break and mend, I built the breath. They hunt now, drawn to life. Not real, still keen. And frit and fraught with thought and zest, and jest no blunt woes. Dodge, duck, flash, shoot, crawl, run, crush the vile band. Cry not, try not, do not hold out, hope no. Your life, your aim will save those with soul." It's unclear who wrote it in the context of this game, because there is genuinely no story to this game. Everything was told through books. Initial theories were that Freddy wrote this because it kind of summarizes the gameplay of Security Breach, and Freddy is the only one who's trying to help you. Another theory was that Freddy is possessed by Michael's spirit, although I have a hard time believing that one, despite the fact that Michael's room is in the Pizzaplex. Why is it here? What does it mean? I don't get it. Anyways, the books reveal that the code was most likely written by a Fazbear employee named Edwin, who has a good chunk of lore relevance, but I'll get there later. Anyways, the rest of the lore from this game comes from the Post-it room and the endings. The Post-it room has a bunch of Post-it notes that range from gibberish to coherent speech. Some of the notes have drawings, others have attempts at writing, and some have full words that say things like, "This is my home," "Leave," "Grown-ups only," "I can feel it," etc. Last but not least, there are sticky notes with binary text written on them. Translating them gives you hide and why is I. Above this room is a table with multiple staff bots. They are arranged to represent the Afton family. There's a woman with blue hair, clearly meant to be Mrs. Afton, looking like Ballora. Then there's a staff bot that looks like Baby, one that's missing its head, like the crying child. The other two are meant to represent William and Michael. This, along with the design for Gregory, spawned the theory of Gregory being a robot. Let me explain. Clearly, the Post-it notes show some kind of evolution from something that starts out in binary before moving on to draw things and form sentences. It's also asking things like, why is I? So clearly it's just starting out and it's evolving through its time in the Pizzaplex. We also know that Gregory isn't a guest at the Pizzaplex, and he's very capable with technology, and there's a hidden area behind the daycare where it seems like someone's been living. Also, based on the escape ending, we know that Gregory, upon escaping the Pizzaplex, takes shelter in a box on the street, implying that he is homeless. So, theorists believe that Gregory has been hiding out in the Pizzaplex for who knows how long. It was also theorized that Gregory is a robot recreation of the crying child. If you look at Gregory, you might notice some design similarities. Young kid, brown hair, and a shirt with 2 gray stripes across the chest. Compare this to the crying child and you'll see that he's a young kid with brown hair and a shirt that has 2 gray stripes across the chest. This led some people to believe that the crying child was being put back together as a robot kid who ended up living in the Pizzaplex. This wouldn't be the first time something like this has happened, because in the 4th closet, it's revealed that Henry, in his grief after losing Charlie, created 4 robot versions of her, one for each stage of her life: toddler, child, teen, and adult. It's a very long, very weird story, but the adult version of Charlie also ended up being Baby, which I'm not even gonna try to explain. Point is, in this series, robot children aren't unheard of, but I don't think that the Post-it room and Afton table actually point towards Gregory being a robot. I have a reason why, but lore-wise, I haven't gotten there yet, so bear with me. Anyways, the last set of things to look at are the endings. This is actually another problem. This game didn't make a clear attempt to showcase which ending is the real one. There are 6 endings that you can get by doing various things, and some of them are fully animated, while others are drawn like a kid drawing a comic book. When you get to the ending, Gregory says,
"If I leave now, nothing will change, will it? there will be more disappearances.
This is the first and only time that these disappearances are brought up in this game. They are not mentioned at any point during the main story and are only brought up at the very end. Even staying at the Pizzaplex doesn't uncover anything about these disappearances. This line literally means nothing to the overall plot because there's nothing to take away from it. If it's supposed to make Vanny seem like a threat, it's too late! The game's over! Anyways, the escape ending is acquired by leaving the Pizzaplex immediately at 6 AM. In this ending, Freddy stays in the Pizzaplex and Vanny follows Gregory and seemingly kills him. You can choose to stay, and that's how you get the other endings. If you get security level 7, you can go back down to the docks and escape using that door. This ending follows Gregory and Freddy stealing a car and leaving the Pizzaplex. If you gather 39 collectibles for some reason, you can go up to the prize counter and escape that way. Doing that results in Freddy lighting the Pizzaplex on fire and then dive tackling Vanny off of the roof. That's the last of the endings where you leave through an exit, so next up, we'll look at the Afton ending. In this ending, you have to fully upgrade Freddy so that he can break through these gates and access an elevator that leads to the burnt remains of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, the location from Pizza Sim. Going down even further reveals a room with 3 monitors, along with Mr. I Always Come Back Afton. He sends the animatronics after you, and tries to take control of Freddy, and it's your job to burn Afton to stop him from mind-controlling Freddy, while also avoiding the animatronics and the Blob. This ending also introduces the Blob, which is basically the game's version of Molten Freddy. It has the faceplates from Funtime Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, the Puppet, Mangle, Baby, etc. During the Afton fight, it will stick out from sewer grates and kill you if you touch it. It will also kill you if you try to initiate the boss fight without Freddy. Anyways, after burning Afton enough times, the place burns down again, the Blob takes Afton, and Freddy escapes with Gregory. The next 2 endings are accessed in similar ways. After you beat Fazerblast, you can find a vent that leads to Vanny's hideout. Finding this gives you a third option at 6 AM, the Vanny option. Picking this takes you to a cutscene where Freddy gets destroyed by the staff bots, leaving Gregory to stop Vanny by himself. This is where the path splits. In one ending, you enter Vanny's room and push a button. This leads to another comic cutscene where Vanny gets destroyed by the staff bots. Freddy ends up getting deactivated, and that's the end. The other ending requires some setup. If you play and beat both Princess Quest 1 and 2, you can play the third game in Vanny's room. Doing this will give you the last ending. In this ending, Vanny is released from the glitch trap virus, and she leaves along with Gregory and Freddy's head. There was a lot of confusion about which of these 6 endings was actually canon, and there were a few things that led people to believe different outcomes. The 3 escape endings were almost entirely thrown out. They only had 1 star and were super anticlimactic endings. That left the other 3. The Disassemble Vanny ending is the first 2-star ending, but it was also somewhat overlooked considering that it's still the comic format and left a lot to be desired. This leaves us with 2 endings. The good ending, where you free Vanessa, was considered to be the true ending. It's the only ending in the game to have 3 stars, and it takes the most setup, requiring you to have played all Princess Quest machines and found Vanny's hideout. However, this ending was also in the comic format, so it was believed that the Afton ending was the true one, as it brought back the series' main villain and was the only ending that was fully animated. No matter how you look at it though, all of the endings are anticlimactic, because none of them have the proper setup. If you think that the Afton ending is canon, then you're still left with the fact that Afton came back again despite being trapped in an eternal hell in UCN. We would also be left with the fact that Vanny is unaccounted for, and where the hell did the animatronics come from if they were all in the Pizzaplex beforehand? Also, what happened to Vanny? If the Afton ending is canon, it poses a lot of questions, like how did Afton come back? What the fuck is the Blob? Etc. You would also have to come to terms with the fact that this ending undoes the Pizza Sim ending, which completely ruins its presence as a final chapter. If you believe any of the escape endings are real, then they directly contradict each other. At 6 AM, Freddy tells you that he can't leave, but if you go to any other exit, he'll leave with no question. If you believe that the Princess Quest ending is true, then you have to deal with the fact that Vanny will no longer be a villain, despite the fact that she had no presence in the game whatsoever after all her build-up. And don't even get me started on how many inconsistencies there are with the endings, and in the game in general. Freddy has a black bow tie. However, once you give him Chica's voice box, it inexplicably changes to a purple one. Whenever you go to either of the Vanny endings, Freddy has Monty's claws during the cutscene. It shows this whether you've gotten the claws or not. To get to the prize counter, you have to go to El Chip's restaurant. The door to that place only opens slightly, which means you have to leave Freddy outside. However, even though Freddy physically cannot get to the prize counter, that ending entirely revolves around Freddy being with you. Now, you may have noticed that I'm beating around the bush with a lot of the reveals here. I haven't said which ending is canon, and I didn't fully explain what the post-it room is or why I don't think Gregory is a robot. And here's the deal. I'm avoiding it for the same reason as FNAF 4. The reveals all come from Ruin and the books surrounding it, so I'm going to reveal all of that when I get there, which will be momentarily. To end off this segment, Security Breach is a very messy game. It makes no effort to tell a coherent narrative outside of the main story, but even then, there's no attempt to give it a proper and clear ending. The gameplay is passable outside of the glitches, but there's no effort to make a game that's really interesting. Instead, it's just a run and push button simulator, with the added benefit of trying to stealth your way around these staff bots that catch you from a million miles away. While I do enjoy the game, I think that there is a lot to be improved on, and even with the updates, the core issues still plague the game to this day. Ruin is the DLC continuation of Security Breach. It is also the most recent game in the series, having come out just about 6 months ago. Ruin follows Cassie, a young girl who was called to the ruins of the Pizzaplex by Gregory, who somehow got stuck down in the sinkhole under the raceway. Now, Cassie has to make her way through the ruins to save him. That's the gist of it. Some hidden secrets are sprinkled in, and big reveal, it's not actually Gregory. Dun dun dun. I don't know if anyone actually thought it was. Anyways, before we get into that, let's talk about the gameplay. Seeing as it's an extension of Security Breach, you can expect that the gameplay is quite similar. This time, however, on top of going around and pushing E, there are a few really easy puzzles that you have to solve. On top of that, the game introduces the AR world via Vanny's mask. This allows you to see power sources and make your way through specific walls and boxes, which is a very weird direction for this series to take, but you know what? We'll go with it. Anyways, it wouldn't be Security Breach if you couldn't abuse the mechanics of the game, so let's talk about the ways that you can break it. In my original Security Breach video, I brought up the fact that the game could be beaten in 3 minutes. This was done by glitching out of bounds and running directly to the Vanny ending. Out of bounds tricks have come back with a vengeance in this game, although you can't beat the game in 3 minutes. There are multiple areas where you can directly jump out of bounds and then use Vanny's mask to teleport yourself to the right area you need to be in. When you get to the theater, rather than using this camera station, you can instead put on the mask and perform a jump to go through the screen. You can then line yourself up to where you're supposed to be and teleport yourself directly into the vent you need to be in. After the Monty Golf section, you can jump out of bounds by jumping from this conveyor belt onto that power module. Once you do this, you can jump into this doorway and get yourself out of bounds, allowing you to skip the majority of the bakery. At one point, you were able to put the mask on and jump your way past the whole bakery by abusing the collision box between this pipe and fence, but every time I've tried it in the most recent update, I get teleported into the bakery and had to do the last node. If you take the mask off in a very specific place, it'll teleport you straight past the salon portion of the game, although again, I was unable to do this in the most recent patch. In Chapter 8, you can abuse the corner collision again and jump out of bounds. Doing this will allow you to entirely skip the Freddy chase sequence. You can also jump out of bounds when you go back to the ruins of Pizza Sim, and you can entirely skip the final chase sequence. It's really funny because you'll have to run through the caves and Gregory will gaslight you into thinking there's something behind you when there isn't. There are plenty of other skips that I don't know how to do, but they all end up making it possible to beat this game in less than 30 minutes. Anyways, there are some gameplay elements that Ruin does better than the main game. There is no guaranteed way to deal with the animatronics this time, no Phaser Blaster or Phazcam, but this actually makes it better. When the animatronics show up, there's actually some challenge because you have no way of stunning them. I also like the fact that the mask throws you for a loop. It starts off by making it seem like it's something that will keep you safe, but then after a little while, you get introduced to Mixes. Mixes then acts as the main threat, as he will appear if you keep the mask on for too long. First, he'll show up in front of you, which means that you have to run away from him and take the mask off. If you fail to do that, then Mixes will jump scare you and cause an instant game over by bringing one of the animatronics directly to your location. Although there is less of a way to deal with animatronics, the game is unfortunately still not challenging, because the animatronics don't appear all that much. The first time you have to actively deal with an animatronic is at Monty Golf. This gives you a tutorial on how to use the camera system to lure animatronics away. However, you don't actually have to do this, because as I learned, you can basically just walk through that area with no issue. Unfortunately, that comes with the side effect of having to get the tutorial at a later section of the game. So yeah, it makes a good choice by removing the guaranteed methods of dealing with the robots, but then makes that irrelevant by not making the animatronics threatening. The other things I like are that they added an autosave feature, so you don't have to worry about losing ridiculous amounts of progress every time. They also removed the battery for the flashlight, which I think is a nice touch, because I find it kind of annoying that you run out of battery so fast in Security Breach, and have to keep charging it so damn much. So, Ruin does do some things that are definitely improvements over the base game, but the base game itself made some choices that carried over to this that just don't go over well. This game, like Security Breach, is a whole lot of running around and pushing E, so it's nothing much gameplay-wise. Delving into the story, I can finally use this to answer a lot of the questions from Security Breach. Like I said earlier during the quick summary, you play as Cassie, making her way through the Pizzaplex to save Gregory. She's given instructions to disable all the security that's active in the Pizzaplex, which she does, leading her to disable her favorite animatronic, Roxy, who had become a security node. However, when you do eventually finish all the tasks and get down to the Pizza Sim ruins, you find out that you were lured there by a robot who mimicked Gregory's voice throughout the entire game. This is the first time that the Mimic is properly introduced in the games, but before this, he was introduced in the books, and that came with a whole lot of reveals. So, the Mimic was introduced in Tales from the Pizzaplex, the Bobby Dots Conclusion. This is actually the same book that the GGY story was in. Anyways, the Storyteller is the first ever introduction to the Mimic, but chronologically the origin of the Mimic comes from the next book in the series, Nexi. That book has a story called The Mimic, which outlines exactly how it was created and came to act the way it does. It follows a man named Edwin who wanted to make machines to improve people's lives. However, he had to accept a buyout from Fazbear Entertainment so that he could stay afloat. Edwin is a father, having a son named David, but due to his work on animatronics, he struggles to divide his time between work and spending time with his son. In order to get around this, Edwin makes an endoskeleton along with an AI meant to mimic his son's behaviors. He calls the AI Mimic 1 and calls the animatronic the Mimic. David loves the animatronic, but one day he's run over while playing outside. Edwin is devastated and just poured his time into his work, avoiding the Mimic. However, the Mimic eventually asks Edwin to give it ice cream, mimicking something that David used to do. This sends Edwin into a rage, so he grabs a metal rod and starts wailing on the Mimic. Edwin's agony ends up infecting the Mimic, and it learns from Edwin's aggressive actions, resulting in the death of multiple Fazbear employees, who were sent to collect things from Edwin's factory. From there, we move to the Storyteller, which takes place 40 years after that. Edwin has returned to Fazbear Entertainment and is acting as a board member. One of the Fazbear executives decides to implement a Storyteller AI which is meant to recycle old ideas and create new ones that can be implemented for VR, AR, and arcade games. The AI is implemented into a tree in the middle of the Pizzaplex. However, after its integration, it starts to affect the way things work. The Glamrocks start to malfunction and act more aggressively, and things around the building start to malfunction. Edwin points out these malfunctions, but nobody takes him seriously, so he takes matters into his own hands and goes into the tree. From there, he realizes that the Storyteller AI is just the Mimic 1 program that he made so long ago. The Fazbear executive catches Edwin and traps him inside the tree, leaving him to suffocate. Eventually, he goes back in and finds Edwin's dead body, along with a note written on the walls of the tree in a code made up of triangles and lines. The entire interior of the hollow tree trunk, to about 6 feet up the wall, was plastered with large sheets of construction paper. The paper was in an array of colors, but each sheet was marked up with plain black marker. Every sheet of paper was covered with odd stick drawings and strange symbols that were not at all familiar to Mr. Burroughs. Squiggles, squares, loops, triangles within triangles, mathematical equations, nonsensical ones from what Mr. Burroughs could tell, were tangled up in the symbols, and written over the top of all this, on nearly every sheet of construction paper, were 2 words: "I'm sorry." While the description isn't one-to-one with the wall code in Michael's room, it is quite similar, leading people to believe that Edwin was the one who wrote that code. We also know that the mimic is the reason that the animatronics were acting aggressively, which is why I was pointing out the GGY theory is contradicted here. I do think I have an explanation for it that ends up combining both of these stories. We know that the animatronics' aggressive nature comes from the mimic AI, so Gregory's tampering doesn't make them aggressive. However, we can see in Ruin that Roxy encounters an error when she attacks Cassie and realizes that it isn't Gregory. There's also the fact that Roxy reaches out to Cassie and saves her from the mimic, although Roxy was disabled, so how the fuck did she get reactivated? I think that Gregory tampering with the animatronics is one of the main reasons that they are after him, even in the ruins of the Pizzaplex when the mimic was trapped and cut off from the rest of the network. Anyways, we can also use this to put together the Post-it room. In The Mimic, David and the Mimic communicate using actions rather than words, and Edwin tries to communicate with the Mimic using this secret code, so we can gather the fact that it doesn't communicate properly in English. Using that, I think the Mimic is the one that's writing the Post-it notes. It's learning from the guests of the Pizzaplex and slowly putting together the ability to properly communicate. I also think that the Mimic set up the table of Aftons by mimicking one of them, presumably William. Now, you may be wondering, why would it be mimicking Afton? Well, now we can get into something from Help Wanted that I didn't fully explain. When Fazbear Entertainment sent over the circuit boards that were used to make the VR game, we know that Glitch Trap took form from something on those boards. People questioned what code could have been taken from these circuit boards, but it makes a lot more sense when you realize that the code taken from Fazbear Entertainment is the same Mimic 1 code that's used in the Pizzaplex and the Mimic Endoskeleton. There's evidence in the game to support this, and it is also much more narratively satisfying rather than a remnant of the real Afton coming back from his ending in Pizza Sim and UCN. So, we know that the tape girl in Help Wanted suddenly switches from saying that there's no way to get rid of Glitch Trap to giving us instructions. This drastic change can easily be explained by the ability for Glitch Trap to mimic her. Its appearance also makes sense, as it's just mimicking the golden buddy that they already programmed into Pizza Party. So anyways, we can confirm that William isn't back, and that the Mimic is our new main antagonist. Anyways, this game also confirms the canon ending of Security Breach, although it also calls some things into question. Considering that Vanny's mask is left unattended and given to Cassie, Freddy's design in his chase sequence, and the fact that you visit the room where the Afton fight happens and it isn't burnt, we can deduce that the Princess Quest ending is the canon ending. However, this does still pose some questions, because the Blob only appeared in the Afton ending, but it also appears for a brief moment in Ruin, which means there are aspects of multiple endings that are canon. There are collectibles in this game, which are poorly drawn versions of every ending except for the Princess Quest ending. They're said to be drawings made by Gregory, and one of them is this scene of the Afton ending where the Blob grabs Afton. So the takeaway from this is that the Blob is real, but Burn Trap isn't. If you couldn't tell, I'm confused. There's a theory that the reason for the Pizzaplex collapsing is that Blob escaped from the sinkhole and caused it to cave in, but I haven't seen anything that confirms it, so I'm not 100% on that. Another thing that people have brought up is Freddy's design. If you look at his foot before the chase scene in Ruin, you can see that it says Prototype. However, during the main game, that is nowhere to be seen. Because of this, some people believe that this is a whole different version of Freddy, while others think it's the same one we saw the entire time. If you look at his design, the missing head and damage to his body, it all lines up with the Princess Quest ending. Gregory took Freddy's head in that ending, so in Ruin, he's missing his head, and if you look at the comic in the Disassemble Vanny ending, you can see that Freddy has the same damage as he does in this game. I personally believe that the prototype thing on his foot is meant to be a design retcon to explain why Freddy wasn't attacking Gregory in the main game. He's a prototype, so he wasn't connected to the main system, which means that the Mimic wasn't controlling him. Anyways, the last thing that I want to bring up is the ending of the game. There are 3 endings, but unlike the base game, Ruin's endings all stem from the ending chase sequence. If you play the game normally and follow the instructions that are given to you, you get to an elevator and just barely escape the Mimic. However, someone or something drops the elevator before it can escape, stranding Cassie down with the Mimic. Before the elevator falls, Cassie was talking to Gregory, but it's unclear whether the elevator was dropped by Gregory or the Mimic. On one hand, we're supposed to be talking to the real Gregory, and his voice does tell her that he can't risk letting the Mimic escape. So, at face value, this is Gregory abandoning Cassie and leaving her for dead. But, at the same time, why would Gregory lead her to the elevator if he didn't want the Mimic to escape? Also, when Cassie was in the elevator, there were 2 separate subtitles for Gregory. One was Gregory explaining who the Mimic was, and the other is Gregory saying that he can't risk it getting loose. Some take this as proof that the Mimic took over and dropped the elevator. Either way, there is potential for some interesting stories that can come from this, and I'm optimistic that they can recover from the security breach era and make some really good games. Anyways, there are 2 other endings. You get one by making a left turn instead of going right. This leads you to a cardboard cutout where you can put on your mask and get a cutscene. In this cutscene, you see Gregory, Vanessa, and Helpy. The last ending is accessed by finding 4 secret doors on cameras in chapters 1, 3, 5, and 7. Finding these cameras opens the 4 secret doors and blocks off the normal ending. It results in the Mimic putting on a combination of multiple costumes and chasing you in that instead of just the endoskeleton. When you get to the secret doors, you reach a room where you push a button and get a cutscene that parallels the Afton ending where the blob grabs Burntrap. Instead, some machine, commonly believed to be some sort of upgraded version of a scooper, grabs the Mimic. These 2 alternate endings have the same issue as most endings in Security Breach. They're anticlimactic. The mask ending is literally just a cutoff from the game, and the scooper ending comes out of nowhere. I'm making an assumption by saying that the elevator ending is the canon one, but it is the ending that the game guides you to, so I think it's a safe assumption. There's also the debate about whether or not Burntrap was supposed to be the Mimic, but there's plenty of evidence to support that. If you look at the design for the Mimic, you can see that his left hand has these sharpened claws. For whatever reason, his right hand was damaged and replaced or something. But if you compare it to Burntrap, you can see that it's basically the same design. We also know that the Mimic can change its eye color, seeing as in the books it starts off orange, but changes to having 1 blue and 1 green eye, among other colors. We see that the Mimic in Ruin has orange eyes, but Burntrap has purple eyes, which are exclusive to that design of Afton. When he was Springtrap, he had glowing white eyes, and when he was Scrapchat, his eyes didn't glow at all. So these purple eyes are exclusive to Burntrap, but it fits in with him being the Mimic, because we know that the Mimic can change its eye color. Anyways, the last bit of evidence is the way each character is modeled. If you look at Burntrap in the cutscene that starts the boss fight, you can see that his left hand is curled up by his chest. This is a design choice shared by the Mimic, as it learned that from the way David held his stuffed animals. So there you have it. Burntrap was Steel Wool's horrible attempt at introducing everyone to the Mimic. It's too bad that the entire story of Security Breach had to be told in the books, because if the game had an actual story, maybe it would have been better. Just over a week before the movie came out, Scott made a Reddit post announcing Five Nights at Freddy's the movie, the game. Of course, as you could already tell by the segment, this was another troll. Obviously, after 9 years, there's no way Scott would release a spoiler-filled movie tie-in before the movie came out. So this ended up being Freddy in Space 3. It's exactly what you'd expect. Another side-scroller. Scott went crazy this time though, making an entire level called NSFW Island, where you can fight enemies such as Anime Bonnie, Love Taste Toy Chica, Chad Freddy. This is hilarious, but also what the fuck. Anyways, not much to talk about for this one in terms of story. It's the same deal with Freddy in Space 2. Complete a level, unlock a character, 4 levels, then a final boss. One of the final bosses is Gregory, and he attacks you with CDs, so if you didn't think he was Patient 46, this seems to suggest otherwise. Anyways, beating the game gives you the code TKYJYLRQFAO. Putting this into a YouTube link brings you to a 9-minute video teaser for the movie. This isn't really important anymore though, because the movie's out, so... I was initially going to make an entire video on the movie, but I spent too long on my Spider-Man 2 video, so by the time I could actually record and edit my movie review, it was already time to work on part 1 of this retrospective. Anyways, let me quickly give my thoughts on the movie before we move on. Spoilers, by the way. I thought that the movie was pretty good if you turn your brain off. Unfortunately, if you're looking for a perfectly constructed movie with no logical gaps, then you're not going to find it from this. Obviously, this is Scott's first screenplay, which is why I'm not going to be too harsh, but with the sequel being all but officially confirmed, there are some areas that could be improved on. The first thing to focus on is the character writing, especially for Vanessa. There are multiple moments where her character acts wildly inconsistently, and she's even just a hypocrite. After Mike gets hurt by Foxy's spirit, Vanessa shows up at the pizzeria and then starts accusing Mike of something. I honestly have no idea about what Vanessa was trying to do here. She says his eyes are bloodshot, his heart rate is through the roof, he's been acting suspicious, and the gash on his arm is suspect. Of what? What are you saying? I honestly don't know what she's implying, especially considering the twist with her later, but whatever. When Mike explains it by saying,
Yeah, look, it's been a weird night.
She just says,
Sounds like Freddy's.
If this sounds like Freddy's, then what was he suspicious for? What were you accusing him of? Later in the movie, when Abby starts hanging out with the animatronics, Mike realizes that they're haunted and potentially dangerous. You know, cause he got hurt by one of them earlier in the movie. But no, when he tries to set ground rules so Abby wouldn't get hurt, Vanessa directly goes against his authority and starts building a fort with Abby and the robots. After this, Abby strums Bonnie's guitar and gets hurt because it malfunctions. Vanessa is very quick to threaten Mike about bringing Abby back to the pizzeria.
You can do whatever you want with your own life, but if you ever bring Abby back here again, I will shoot you.
Vanessa, do you remember when Mike was trying to set rules so that Abby wouldn't get hurt by the animatronics? Yeah? Do you also happen to remember that you completely overruled his authority and got Abby to play with the animatronics without any safety rules? Oh, I'm Vanessa. I'm gonna let Abby play with the animatronics but then get mad at Mike when he was the one trying to keep her safe. There's also the fact that she said Mike was criminally liable for the break-in to Freddy's because he didn't lock up, despite the fact that she watched Mike lock the front door. Anyways, there's also the fact that Afton had no presence as a villain before he showed up in the last 10 minutes of the film, and characters would teleport to Freddy's as the plot needed it. Before the final battle, Mike and Vanessa are somewhere away from Freddy's. Vanessa refused to go back because she was afraid of Afton, so she sent Mike alone with her police car. Later on, she shows up at the pizzeria despite not having a car. So, yeah, there are some issues, but I still enjoyed it. I liked the YouTuber cameos, I loved the design of the animatronics, the scene where Max gets bit in half was insane, and the actors all did a great job. I just really hope that theorists don't use this to say that Afton is Vanessa's father in the games, because it's not true, without some major retcons. I've seen so many theories saying that Baby is coming back as the main villain of the series, but I don't think that works. I don't want to bash on anyone's theories or opinions, but MatPat, for example, has said that he wants to close the chapter of old characters in the series, but he's so quick to jump onto theories that bring back the old characters that should be left in the past. Now, all due respect is given to MatPat. He has been a huge part of the fandom for nearly a decade, and I'm not ruling out the possibility that she could come back. But I think that everything following UCN has been focusing on a new story, new characters, new animatronics, etc. Yes, the Mimic was mimicking Afton, but that's just it. It's mimicking the past, not bringing it back. I'm not here to dictate what's right or wrong, but I personally don't like the theory stating that Elizabeth and Charlie's spirits are both present and fighting for control of the Pizzaplex. Anyways, let's just move on. Okay, I mentioned way back when I was talking about FNAF 4 that there were some big lore reveals that came from one of the recent books in the series. That story is called Didophobia, and it follows a kid named Rory who was part of an experiment run by William Afton. You see, Rory and some other kids were kidnapped when they were young. Rory was 7, and they were taken to the sister location bunker. In said bunker, Afton used hallucinogenic gas to study the fear in children. Rory eventually is able to escape from the FNAF 4 house deeper into the sister location bunker, revealing that those observations are definitely inside the bunker and not above it like everyone thought initially. Anyways, we learned that Rory has been there for 10 years. The Funtime animatronics are still at the bunker, and Afton has been spring-locked at this point in the timeline. If we assume that these experiments started soon after the crying child died, then we can say that these experiments were running from, at earliest, 1983 until 1993. People believed that since the sister location robots were still in the bunker in 1993, this means that sister location happens after FNAF 1. If we assume that though, it breaks Michael's motivation to go to the FNAF 1 location. We can actually still assume that sister location is before FNAF 1, because there are 12 months in a year, and there is nothing specifying when sister location took place. But we do know that FNAF 1 happened in November or December, depending on how you read the date here. Either way, we know that FNAF 1 takes place very late in 1993, which means that there are 10 or 11 months where sister location can take place, Mike can get scooped, and his motivation to find his father will be born. So then, this story also spawned a new theory for Midnight Motorists. The theory is that the kid who was taken from the house is Rory. The animatronic footprints in the bushes is Afton kidnapping him, and that means that the orange lad is just someone in Rory's family. I personally don't like that theory, because it makes no sense for Scott to make Pizza Sim as a finale to tie up all the loose story threads, and then randomly throw in a minigame that introduces entirely new characters that aren't expanded upon or revealed for 6 years. There's also the fact that, if Afton were there to kidnap Rory, he would have likely walked up to the window to take him. And if the kid in question is Rory, what the hell would the "he ran off to that place again" mean? I do think that it is likely trying to explain FNAF 4, but I don't think that it's from the perspective of some random kid that we wouldn't get any info on for years. All in all, this explanation isn't a satisfying one, and I much prefer the one where William was using Michael as a guinea pig in these tests. The only issue comes from the debate of whether or not Tales from the Pizzaplex is a book series that is meant to be in the same continuity of the games, or if they're stories that are meant to inform our understanding of them. In The Storyteller, Edwin writes what seems to be a similar code to the one we see in Michael's room. However, it's written on paper on the inside of a tree that's nowhere to be seen when we play Security Breach. So that begs the question, if Edwin didn't write the code, who did? Or is the storyteller trying to tell us that Edwin did write the code and the game just varies from what we saw in the books? That's what happened with the original novels. They were stories that introduced a lot of the aspects that we could come to understand in this series. Afton, Henry, Charlie, their characters and motivations were all revealed in the Silver Eyes trilogy before the games. Afton being the killer, Henry losing his child to Afton, Charlie being Henry's daughter, all of that originally came from the books, but we were able to use that information to piece together the story of the games. Henry also died before the Silver Eyes trilogy, but he still came back in the games. So, for all we know, Edwin could be alive in the games, and he could have written that code in the sister location room. So, until any official confirmation, I'm going to say that Didophobia is meant to inform us about what was happening in FNAF 4, rather than being a one-to-one retelling of what really happened. Especially because if Didophobia is meant to be exactly what happened, then why would Mike have seen the Nightmare animatronics? In the story, Rory is the only survivor of these tests, which means that if it was a one-to-one retelling, Mike would have been dead. Anyways, that's the last lore reveal I have for FNAF 4, so let's move on. Alright, thank you everyone for watching. I'm going to cut this part here. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye!